she does have the opportunity to just open the door and run away, but there's this threat looming over her head. And there's also, the fact that she doesn't speak the language. She doesn't speak the Romanian language. So do you think that she's being coerced in that way?
That would be an argument you have to make in front of a court. Yeah, that there was coercion involved. The person felt like there was a genuine threat to harm that person, that there was a genuine threat to their life, that they felt like they were being financially exploited and they couldn't leave. These are all arguments.
So they felt that way. They felt like that. That's subjective. That's exactly my point.
So hold on, let me just be clear. Your point is that feelings are inadmissible in a court of law? That how a person feels about a thing?
Feelings are subjective. That's
Do you understand what mens rea is? Oh, like half of criminal code has to do with a person's state of mind and how they felt about things before going into it, of course.
Yeah, if you start accepting things like how a person feels and that being evidence for criminal action, then all kinds of criminality is happening around us every day.
Yeah, this is how all criminal law works. All of it needs this.
Murder is not based on that. Murder is not based on anyone's
feelings. Of course it is based on your feelings.
If a person kills another, premeditated, kills another person, there's a dead body there. You had the motive, you actually had the weapon, you engaged.
What is motive? What is motive? That's a feeling. Is it my time to go?
Yeah.
Cool. December of last year, Andrew and Tristan Tate were arrested along with 2 Romanian nationals. According to DICOT, the Romanian Directorate for Investigating Organized Crime and Terrorism, the 4 suspects appear to have created an organized crime group with the purpose of recruiting, housing, and exploiting women by forcing them to create pornographic content meant to be seen on specialized websites for a cost. DICOT claims that it had identified 6 victims in the human trafficking case who were subjected to acts of physical violence and mental coercion and were sexually exploited by the members of the alleged crime group. The agency said victims were lured with pretenses of love and later intimidated, kept under surveillance, and subjected to other control tactics while being coerced into engaging in recorded pornographic acts. These claims have been widely discussed online, with misinformation being presented by both the left and right in an effort to either prematurely exonerate or demonize the Tate brothers for their actions. Regardless of anyone's personal feelings about the Tate brothers, however, I believe it is reasonable to assume that they have been involved in sex trafficking based on the evidence that is released thus far and the statements the Tate brothers themselves have made. I will stress, however, that new evidence could come to light that would change my opinion on these matters, that would have to be quite fantastic to divert from what is already known. According to the 2014 Romanian Criminal Code, Article 210, trafficking in human beings is defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons for exploitation purposes by means of coercion, abduction, deception, or abuse of authority, or by taking advantage of a person's blatant state of vulnerability, where exploitation is defined by Article 182 as forcing persons into prostitution, pornography, in view of obtaining and distributing pornographic material or any other types of sexual exploitation. That means, for us to say that we have a reasonable belief that Andrew Tate was involved in trafficking, we need to meet just 3 conditions. Did Andrew Tate recruit, transport, and harbor women onto his property to work for his camming business? Were there women being exploited to work for his webcam business? And did Andrew engage in deception to lure these women into his business? I believe we can easily meet all 3 of these conditions with publicly available evidence right now, so let's review. Did Andrew Tate recruit, transport, and harbor women onto his property to work for his camming business? Andrew has spoken extensively about how he would recruit women to his camming business. According to his website, Andrew bragged that he had been running a webcam studio for nearly a decade and claimed that he had over 75 girls work for him. He said his business model is different than 99% of webcam studio owners and that over 50% of his employees were actually just his girlfriends at the time. And, over 50% of his employees were actually his girlfriends at the time, and none of them were in the adult entertainment industry before they met him. The page where he stated this has since been deleted, but can be accessed via the internet. Tates were also extremely protective of women on their properties. On the podcast PTW with Entrepreneur with Cars, Tristan speaks about demanding absolute loyalty from his girls that he both fucks and employs as cam models, not allowing them to message other men on Instagram or fall in love with any other person. He speaks about these women as both partners and business assets and says that communicating with other men would be breaking protocol. In Tristan's God Mode coaching guide, he speaks about having 6 different girlfriends whom he demands absolute loyalty from, and all 6 girls that he brags about dating are cam girls that work exclusively for him, following every single order he gave them. He also speaks about having access to social media accounts of these women so that they're unable to communicate with other men. Andrew Tate has similarly spoken about how the women who work for him were not allowed out of the house, not allowed to go to clubs or restaurants with their friends, and not allowed to leave without accompanied bodyguards. They were forced to stay inside of his properties to work for him in Romania, where he transported the women to. Believe that this alone easily satisfies condition 1, the Tates indeed recruited women from other countries onto their property to work exclusively for their camming business. For condition 2, were the Tates... Wait, do I have a timer anywhere? What am I at?
You're at about 3 minutes, so you're still good.
Cool. Okay, good. For condition 2, with the Tates exploiting women to work for his webcam business. Not only were the women obviously being set up to work in the webcam business, Andrew Tate admitted to stealing from them while running their accounts. He spoke in a now deleted video about how to effectively take girls, teach them how to make unlimited money at home, and give all of that money to him. He also spoke about making sure that the women knew she always needed him for work, even if they didn't, and spoke about strategies that pimps would utilize in order to keep women mentally weak. He gave guidance to his viewers on how to keep the women working under him by lying to them about how complicated their taxes were, and then further admits to stealing additional money from his victims by lying about their tax liabilities. In the example that he gave, he claimed that for every $10,000 they made, he'd give them $3,000 and keep $7,000, then lie about them, getting 50% of the cut, and explain that he had to pay extra due to taxes. Not only does this amount to tax and employer fraud, it easily clears the bar for exploitation. For condition 3, the question arises whether or not there was deception involved in luring girls into their sex trafficking racket. Fortunately for us, Andrew has given tons of evidence about how he would regularly engage in deception to trick women into coming to work for his camming business. He commonly gave advice for how to use a close associate, Vivian, to sell the idea of camming to other girls by downplaying her relationship with Tate and showing the other girls a good time. He would also describe how Vivian would play along with Tate in order to make other girls, newer girls, feel more special to Tate than they actually were. While describing this interaction, he even refers to Vivian as his bottom bitch, which is common pimp terminology for a woman close to the pimp who helps him recruit and entrap other women to work for him. He speaks about pairing new girls with Vivian, using Vivian to show new girls a good time. In logs leaked by the Romanian prosecution, Andrew promises marriage to a girl in order to get her to move to Romania with him. Condition 3 is easily met, as Andrew regularly deceives women using the commonly described lover boy method for his sex trafficking organization. There are other problematic aspects we can discuss with Andrew Tate, such as him messaging 15 to 16-year-old girls across Romania from Instagram, the 2 abuse videos leaked of him on the internet, a leaked audio log of him talking about choking a woman and loving it, conversations where women were threatened with violence for not earning enough money, and more. Regardless of the other accusations, I believe there is enough evidence floating on the internet now to believe with a decent probability that the Tates will be convicted of some crime around trafficking, unless something significant changes between now and the trial.
Thank you very much for that opening. And want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from. And don't forget, we have many more juicy upcoming debates. You don't want to miss them. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, absolutely thrilled for this one, Stuart Nettle and Matt Dillhunty will be debating this Thursday. And whether or not Christianity is rational, you don't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Daniel for his opening as well. Thanks so much for being with us, Daniel. The floor is all yours.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. As a Muslim, I completely condemn Andrew Tate's past involvement with the webcam business. I also condemn his personal behavior that is contrary to the values of Islam. That being said, last year he converted to Islam, which means he is my Muslim brother, and as such, I will stand by his side and support him while also condemning his past actions. As far as Islam is concerned, Andrew Tate was in the wrong for his webcam business, but so were the cam girls working for him. If his cam girls one day convert to Islam, we would also consider them sisters in Islam and stand by their side. But this debate is not about whether Andrew Tate violated Islamic law. There is no question that he did. The debate today is on whether he broke existing Western laws. This cannot be proven at present. There are 3 major issues here. 1, political control. 2, due process. And 3, contradictions in Western attitudes towards sex. First, let's talk about political control. Western governments control speech and political opponents through charges of terrorism or charges of abuse of women. Charges of abuse of women include things like trafficking, domestic abuse, sex discrimination, or harassment. There's a long history of the US government using these charges of abuse of women to target political opponents. Examples include Emmett Till, as well as numerous civil rights activists, most famously Martin Luther King. Declassified FBI documents show that the US government targeted MLK in their counterintelligence program. Specifically, they plan to blackmail MLK through smearing him as a rapist and serial abuser of women. Other alleged abusers in more recent times include Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Senator Al Franken, and on and on. My point is not that all these politicians were innocent. My point is that accusations of abusing women is a powerful weapon that is often used to neutralize political opposition. Other high-profile examples include Tariq Ramadan in France and Julian Assange. Tariq Ramadan was an Oxford professor who often criticized France and other EU countries for discrimination against Muslims. For this, he was targeted and eventually detained and put into solitary confinement for months on multiple charges of rape. All the initial charges were eventually dropped when it was discovered that his accusers had colluded with each other to make their claims and that their claims were inconsistent with verified facts. Another case is Julian Assange, infamous for his work with WikiLeaks exposing all kinds of government criminality. Assange faced accusations of rape by two Swedish women who it turns out had also colluded with each other. After 7 years of Assange being holed up, the Swedish authorities dropped the case because, quote, the memories of the women had faded about the alleged incidents. The whole case was dropped, but the political objective had been achieved of neutralizing Assange, since he is now facing extradition to the US, where he'll be either imprisoned for life or executed. Tate's case has a lot of parallels with Assange and other political dissidents. We cannot ignore this context of political control through accusations of rape and abuse of women. Point 2, due process. Tate and his brother and 2 others face charges of trafficking and rape, etc. The problem is these charges violate fundamental aspects of due process. This is because 1, the crimes are poorly defined. 2, they have low standards of evidence, for example, simply the verbal claims of women. And 3, they can be made at any time for the events in the past as needed, meaning there's no statute of limitations. And 4, they result in extreme social damage, even without conviction. Due process is a basic human right acknowledged in all legal systems. This is to protect people from the inevitable false accusations. So, for example, rape is poorly defined. Why? Proving rape requires proving either fraud and or coercion, but both fraud and coercion are highly subjective and evolving standards. If a man tells a woman that he loves her in order to have sex with her, but he doesn't actually love her, is that fraud? If a woman lies to a man about her body count and then sleeps with him, is that fraud and therefore rape? If making false claims amounts to rape, there will be a huge amount of rape cases in society because people often lie in their relationships. But Western law actually allows for many kinds of dishonesty without being technically fraud or rape. Something can be immoral, in other words, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is illegal. Same with coercion. If you chain someone to a radiator and force her to be a prostitute, that's clear coercion. But the definition of coercion is much more subjective than that because of power differentials. This is why statutory rape is a thing. Even if a 15-year-old gives consent, it doesn't count because he or she cannot give meaningful consent to an adult who is more mature and more powerful, according to Western law. Many feminists argue that as long as a man is bigger, stronger, and more powerful than a woman, there can never be meaningful consent, and therefore any sexual activity is by default rape. Another issue is, what about affirmative consent? If you do not affirmatively get consent for every single action you do in the middle of a sex act, that is technically rape, according to the National Women's Law Center and actually the Biden administration. Trafficking is also a highly subjective charge for exactly the same reasons, because fraud and coercion and exploitation are very subjective as defined by these legal systems. And finally, point 3, inconsistent liberal attitudes towards sex and female responsibility. On the one hand, liberals have this casual understanding of sex, and they accuse Muslims of being too prudish and too restrictive about sex. We are told that sex work and pornography are just harmless, natural activities. Why are Muslims or religious people so uptight about it? Having casual sex or displaying your naked body on camera is no more harmful than breathing air or eating a sandwich. But if that's the case, then what really was the harm done to these women, even if they were forced to webcam? By the liberal logic, wouldn't it be as harmful as being forced to breathe air or to eat a sandwich? But normal people, of course, recognize that being forced into sex is more of a violation than being forced to eat a sandwich. But that implies that the act of having sex is more significant, more sensitive, and potentially more damaging than other everyday activities. And that's exactly why Muslims are so cautious about it and have strict rules regulating it. Exactly the same rules that liberals criticize Islam for. So this is inconsistent. Another inconsistency, we are told that women are strong and independent. But then when it comes to these sex cases, we are told that women are like children and that they're so easy to deceive and so easy to manipulate. So which is it? If it's so easy to deceive and manipulate women, then maybe we need to ban pornography entirely, ban fornication, and institute a male guardian system so that women can be fully protected at all times and can't be taken advantage of by the likes of Andrew Tate. Maybe the people who are so offended by Andrew Tate's business model can acknowledge that an Islamic system would completely shut down his whole operation before it even launched. This is because Islam offers objective standards for protecting people's rights as opposed to the subjective and highly politicized legal standards of the Western legal system.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well, Daniel. And folks, we're going to jump into the open conversation, but a quick housekeeping note. First, in particular, you can see at the bottom right of your screen, we are expanding onto TikTok. Once we get to 1,000 followers on TikTok, we'll be able to live stream our debates there as well, or at least the first hour of them. So want to say, if you have a TikTok account, please do follow us. I'll put that link in the live chat. It's also already in the description box. And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours for open dialogue.
Yeah, so to reiterate, I'm not here to debate Islam or Christianity or the morality of the West or anything. I don't know what any of that has to do with anything. My question is simply, is there enough, or I believe that the subject of the debate is there enough evidence out there that we could reasonably believe that in Romania, Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, and the two Romanian national women that were arrested with him, one was one of his women and the other was a police officer, is there enough evidence to convict them reasonably of sex trafficking in Romania, based on what's released thus far? And I believe the answer to that is a resounding yes. I didn't hear you address any of that, although I heard a lot of stuff about MLK and the CIA and everything else, but we're talking Romania right now.
That all of the things that you can point to about his statements on videos, all of that is consistent with him being completely innocent.
Can you give me an example of, when I made statements about him on his website, when he's running a cam studio for nearly a decade, where he's girlfriends with over 50% of his employees. That doesn't
he had at some points over 70 girls working for them. You're saying 50% of those girls were his girlfriends?
Yes.
And they were not aware that they're all his girlfriends.
Correct, because he's made other statements to the concerning the Vivian girl, the one he calls his bottom bitch, that she would regularly downplay his relationships in order to lure other women in, under the false pretense that they were something special to him. One of the leaked text messages that the prosecution leaked, he was talking to a girl saying that he wanted to marry her if she just moved to Romania with him.
All right, so we can go through all of those points step by step, but I just want you to acknowledge that these kinds of accusations can be used for political control against dissident figures like Julian Assange, like Martin Luther King. Is this something that you acknowledge that?
No, I won't. It's not relevant here unless you can provide me some evidence that.
So you don't think that MLK was pressured by the FBI?
I don't have an opinion on it because it's not relevant to this conversation. If you want to talk about MLK, we can.
You acknowledge the facts that happened.
I don't care. It's not relevant to this conversation.
It is relevant.
Not relevant
because the prosecutors in Romania are part of DICOT, which is controlled by the Trafficking in Persons report established by the United States. And that DICOT organization that you can read about on the State Department, U.S. State Department website, is deputized by the U.S. government to prosecute this case involving Andrew Tate. So it is highly relevant what the U.S. government does in previous cases of these kinds of accusations.
Yep, I read the exact same Twitter thread that I know you're referencing, but no evidence has been given whatsoever that these charges are political in nature. If you have any evidence, I would love to hear it.
That's
but simply
context.
showing,
that's context,
no, that's not context. Simply showing that the United States is trying to work with other countries around the world to fight sex trafficking is not the big W that you think it is. Romania has traditionally had.
Many countries have complained about how the U.S. has authorized itself to be the police of the entire world. And they point out that it's extremely political how the U.S. uses these types of lists. So
I'm going to ask again after there's
yeah, all of this is relevant because it is highly political. Like, for you to claim that this is not a political situation, it's completely political free. The US could care less about the position of Andrew Tate on social media and the messages that he puts out. Like, that is beyond belief, especially when we have the Twitter files showing that the FBI is literally involved in policing like random conservative Twitter accounts, like no-name 5-follower Twitter accounts on Twitter, or like directing Twitter as a company to take down even these random conservative accounts. But they're somehow not concerned with Andrew Tate, someone who has the millions of followers and is the most Googled person on the internet.
Yeah, so I just want to point out for the audience. So what I'm trying to do is ask a very specific pointed question, and I'm going to return to it every time. And your goal is to ramble about irrelevant stuff because you have nothing on this topic. So I'm going to refocus on the same question again, and I'll see where you ramble off to. But my question is there any direct evidence that these charges for Andrew Tate are political in nature?
I don't see how you think it's irrelevant. Like, this is, first of all, there's a presumption of innocence with any kind of criminal prosecution. So you have to take into consideration potentials for the obstruction of justice, potential for violations of due process. That's all concerning the legal case.
Have there been any violations of due process?
Yeah, the ones that I described.
Which ones? What was a violation of due process?
There's no statute of limitations.
If the statute of limitations has been removed as part of the Romanian criminal code, how is that a violation of due process?
Statute of limitations
by definition in Romania, that's not a violation of due process. You're wrong. You're just wrong. But go ahead. You can say number two if you want. Yeah.
There are certain human rights standards about due process, and statute of limitations is one of them. That's found in the U.S. legal system for a reason.
Yeah, but Andrew Tate specifically removed to Romania. You're telling me that the United Nations has made a formal statement saying that no country is allowed to remove a statute of limitations on any crime? Is that a statement that the UN has made?
No, you're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
I'm not. Hold on. Very clearly, what you're saying is that Romania not having a statute of limitations in regards to sex crimes is somehow a violation of some fundamental right. Now, you appealed to the United States, but what is I don't even remember the amendment. But that's the United States Criminal Code. We're not in the United States. Andrew Tate specifically moved to Romania in order to take advantage of the Romanian legal system. So the United States. Wait, hold on, real quick. So the United States criminal.
My answer to your question.
Well, because you're not explaining anything. If you're saying the UN
has
made,
anything.
I'm because it's not my job to explain. I'm asking you a question. The original question, to recenter again, was: is there any evidence that any of these charges are political in nature? And you're rambling now about due process, as I said you would, because you will ramble because you have absolutely no evidence.
My opening statement had 3 points. Okay. Political control. So you want to disregard that. This case
I'm not disregarding it. I'm asking what evidence you have for it.
The evidence I gave you the evidence of the Twitter files and how the U.S. is highly concerned with social media personalities and are actively involved in trying to deplatform people on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. So that shows the political concern. I gave you historical examples of Martin Luther King, Julian Assange. Do you not think that those cases are political?
What do you when you say
they involve rape accusations of dissident political figures, and I just want you to acknowledge, which you refuse to do, that this case could also have political ramifications or a political context, but you want to deny that. So that's fine. So I moved to the legal aspect of it, which is violations of due process. I mentioned statute of limitations. This is a fundamental part of due process across many legal systems, including the U.S. legal system.
We're not in the U.S.
Which is the one that is policing human trafficking. As you mentioned, the U.S. is policing trafficking across the world. So do you think legal standards in the U.S. are relevant to that? And number 2, the rape and fraud and coercion, exploitation, these are ill-defined and they're very subjective. That is also a violation of due process. Why? Because if you have a crime, it has to be very clear what the crime is. If you have this kind of blurred line between a legitimate webcam business, what does a legitimate webcam business actually involve? What
Just as a note, you're rambling again. I'm going to re-ask the same question. We go right back to the beginning.
How is that distinguished from these standards of trafficking and rape that we find in Tate's case and in others?
Yep.
So that was the legal implications of this whole case.
Okay, gotcha. So evidence is not the government has done these things in the past, so therefore they're doing it now in the future. That's literally just a logical non sequitur. I don't want to use a debate term, but like it doesn't make sense to say that, well, if the government did something bad in the past, they must be doing it doesn't. They must be doing bad things in the future. For that, we need something called evidence. Now, I don't know if you know what evidence is or what evidence means, but evidence is typically going to be some collection of facts that point you towards, in some kind of concrete manner, of somebody doing something. Saying this happened in the past, therefore it's happening in the future, that wouldn't work in a court of law. It wouldn't work in an argument with a friend. It wouldn't work on a Reddit debate post. I don't know why you can cite. I don't know why you can cite. I don't know. Hold on, I let you ramble for like 5 minutes, okay? I don't know why you can cite MLK. I don't know why you can cite people who died almost a century ago and say, well, since they did it there, they must have international pressure on other countries. Even if I did accept the MLK example, it's still quite dissimilar to the United States using international pressure to control another country's legal system. And by doing so, you're also like just hand waving all of the evidence that is out there relating to the charges that have been brought to Andrew Tate. Now, if you want to harp on this thing like due process isn't being met because there's no statute of limitations, you can't cite that anywhere. You know you can't cite that. The UN hasn't released a statement saying that countries aren't allowed to have no statute of limitations. That's not even an important part of due process. Due process just ensures that you have some engagement with the legal system that allows you some sort of like trial, some sort of representation, some sort of ability to plead your case in front of hopefully some dispassionate body that allows you to get an outcome that is fair. The idea that there's no statute of limitations around sex trafficking, I don't think it's a substantial violation of a due process. It certainly isn't in the Romanian Criminal Code. As of 2014, I can't find anything that bans that. And it certainly isn't the case that the UN has made any statements about that. So everything you're saying about that is just complete and total nonsense, unless you want to appeal to U.S. legal standards. But unfortunately, the Tate brothers specifically said they moved to Romania to take advantage of their legal system. So I don't know why you would cite U.S. legal precedents here. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, you keep going back to also this thing saying that like, oh, the charges are vague. Oh, whatever. If you want, I can link you the 2014 Romanian Criminal Code. I sourced some of it for you. We can go through Article 210. We can look at what trafficking means. And you know, we can read it down and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I don't think that it's vague at all. I think it's pretty obvious. If you traffic in human persons, if you recruit, transport, transfer, harbor, or receive them from another person by means of coercion, abduction, deception, that means lying, and then you use that to sell pornographic material, that seems like it's sex trafficking. It's pretty obvious in Article 210 there. I don't think there's anything that's vague. Article 182 has more to do with exploitation, but yeah, if you want to have like an actual argument over the thing, it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad if you're just going to hand wave everything, saying, well, in the past these things happened, and everything is like very vague because you don't seem to want to engage with any of the facts of the matter, which I spent a lot of time unfortunately researching. So if you want to talk about any of the facts of the matter, be interested. But vague allusions to the Twitter files or MLK are not it. Yeah,
like your internet sleuthing, like you're watching clips online. You're just taking evidence, like what you call evidence is whatever is fed to you by Vice News and these different outlets, which are very opposed to Tate. They're very anti-Tate, who are putting selected clips out. And you've acknowledged this yourself.
No, I have not. That's a lie. That's a lie.
You have acknowledged this yourself that it's possible that these things that Andrew Tate himself says are not true. Like he's just playing a part. He's just playing a character. And if it's true, what he's saying, if it's true, on these videos, then that would constitute sex trafficking. So you yourself have acknowledged this kind of plausible or reasonable doubt in your streams, multiple streams, your debate with Sneeko and so forth. But now you want to say that, no, you never said that. Fine, that's okay. The other thing that I want to point out is that all of the sex trafficking standards that you want to cite and take as irrefutable facts that no one has a problem with, there are plenty of people who have problems with these standards, and specifically the fact that the U.S. is the police of sex trafficking, and they use their TIP report, trafficking in persons report, to give different countries tiers, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And this is highly politicized. Countries like Malaysia have written reports that this is a violation of international laws to have the U.S. deputize itself to traffic other countries and put other countries on lists based on its own standards that it defines according to U.S. law, and then use that to penalize countries. Because if a country is put on a tier 3 sex trafficking list, that it hurts them economically because a lot of businesses are not going to do business with tier 3 countries. So this is a political weapon that the U.S. has used. And if you want to look at citations for this, look at Anne Gallagher in her 2000 report improving the effectiveness of the international law of human trafficking, a vision for the future of U.S. trafficking in persons report in the Human Rights Review. And she says that this TIPS trafficking report from the U.S. has been criticized on a wide range of fronts. Quote, its very existence angers activists and governments alike who object to the USA appointing itself supervisor and arbiter of a complex international issue that remains both contested and controversial. So there is nothing, just settled about this idea of trafficking that you keep saying. This is an ignorance of this conversation around human trafficking, because this is a highly contested and controversial issue. What you want to hand wave and say that, no, everything is settled, everyone knows what trafficking is. And I gave you examples. Like if someone says that, oh, I love you, let's have a relationship, but it turns out that they don't actually love the person, is that fraud?
If they used that relationship that they promised you to bring you to another country and sell you as pornographic material, that would be sex trafficking, which is exactly what Andrew Tate did. So yes,
right, so
just curious.
Is that case?
Would you? No,
even,
it's not. It wouldn't be. No, we can look at. There's a whole bunch of. It doesn't. No, there's not. What is the exploitation? What is the exploitation there?
The definition of rape. I asked, is it rape?
You said there's exploitation there. What is the exploitation?
It's a lie. You've lied to
That's
someone.
not exploitation. Article 182 in the Romanian Civil Code clearly states, it says, forcing persons into prostitution, pornography in view of obtaining and distributing pornographic material or any other types of sexual exploitation. That is what exploitation is defined as in Article 182 for the Romanian Criminal Code, which is referenced in Article 210 when we talk about trafficking for human persons. Here's a question. If Andrew Tate was Christian, would you be defending him?
Yep.
Okay. Why did you even bring up the fact? Why did you bring up the fact that he was a Muslim?
Julian Assange.
Okay.
I defend
just
Julian
curious.
Assange.
So.
I made that statement just at the beginning
James,
to make sure that it's clear that I disavow the pornography business as a Muslim.
Are we allowed to
That's
watch?
Why it's relevant.
Are we allowed to play clips here that we can talk about a clip or no?
Sure, works for me.
Okay. Do you want to? So you brought up something.
I brought the example of rape because he is charged with rape. So if a woman lies to a man and says that I've only slept, or I'm a virgin, and she sleeps with a man, is that rape because she lied?
No, I don't believe anybody's been prosecuted for that.
No, there have been cases of prosecution for lying to gain sex. For example,
No. Lying and saying you were a virgin? No, there have not been. Not in the United States. Maybe somewhere in the world, but not in the United States.
Okay, so what if someone says that, for example, I'm Jewish, okay, and has sex with a Jewish woman, and then it turns out he's a Palestinian? Or he's non-Jewish.
I don't know what any of these have to do with this. We're talking about lying to somebody. It's not relevant. We're talking about lying to somebody.
The definition of rape.
No, you're trying to play some fuzzy around the edges thing to try to get me on a. Yeah, we're not talking about that.
The definition of fraud.
We're not talking about fraud.
And coercion are subjective. That's the point that I'm trying to emphasize.
They are somewhat subjective. That's why you go to court. That's why you have judges and juries that make rulings on these things. If you sit in front of a judge and you try to say, well, stealing is subjective, maybe they dropped it and I immediately picked it up and ran away with it, a judge is going to laugh at you and throw the book at you, obviously. We can't say that just because it's completely and totally impossibly difficult to figure one thing out or another, on some rigid, define the edges on every single thing, that means that there's no such thing as fraud or no such thing as coercion, right? Lying to somebody and saying, I was a virgin.
The definition of rape.
There is a definition
of rape.
We're not talking about rape. We're talking about sex trafficking right now. We're talking about sex trafficking.
One of the charges is rape.
We're not talking about that charge. I don't care about that charge.
Why are we not talking about that charge? You don't care about rape? You don't care about
when it comes to Andrew Tate, the big charge is the sex trafficking. That's what he's being charged with.
There's an overlap in the definition for trafficking and the definition for rape.
No, those are two distinct things.
Fraud and coercion. Both of their definitions involve fraud and coercion. That's why I'm talking about the subjectivity of fraud and coercion. That's how it's relevant.
Okay, can I use like a 2-minute talking? Can I use a 2-minute talking time and get Daniel's opinion on this? Oh, also, I want to push back on one other thing you said. You said that I'm showing clips from Vice, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the evidence I've gotten has come from Tate himself. I'm not relying on cut-up interviews from Vice or things republished from Vox or something. I'm just going by statements that Andrew and Tristan Tate have made. They've done plenty of podcasts. They've released plenty of material where they've spoken about what they do. If James will play it. Here, we can listen to this 2 or 3 minute clip right here where he answers explicitly how he utilizes his bottom bitch, as he calls her, Vivian, in order to entrap other women, downplay their relationship, and then later use them for pornographic purposes. And then you can tell me if this sounds like a coercive or if this sounds like deception or not.
All right, but the thing is, I said that deception can be immoral, but it's not necessarily illegal.
No, not necessarily, but in the case where you use it to
That's
solicit,
the problem with the. That's the problem.
that's
with
not the problem.
definition of
That's
rape
not
and
the problem.
trafficking.
If you use
It
it
is.
to lure a girl into a fake relationship and then force her to sell pornography and then steal from her, that's sex trafficking.
Yeah, you're using very charged terms. To say
Wait, hold on.
luring.
It is not charged. It lures by saying, "Come here and I will marry you." It's stealing because he talks about how he will steal from them by faking their taxes.
How do you know? How do you know that he, for any particular girl, didn't actually have the intention to marry her? Because he's stated on different podcasts that he has multiple wives, or he's implied that he has multiple wives.
I don't think he's ever said that. I think he said he's had multiple girlfriends.
Look at Piers Morgan's interview, where he admits or he implies and suggests that he has multiple wives. Piers Morgan asked him, "Are you married?" And he says maybe, and he says, "Do you have multiple wives?" Something along that nature, and he implies that yes, he does. He implies that he has multiple wives.
Oh, okay.
So
then do you agree then that he should be punished in Romania because that's illegal in Romanian law? You can't have more than one wife at a time. Do you think he should go to jail for that? In Romania, bigamy, defined as marriage conducted by a person who's already married, is punishable by up to 2 years in prison or fine. Knowingly marrying a married person is punishable up to 1 year in prison or fine. I think this is illegal in a lot of countries in Europe.
If he did break the law, then yeah, I would say that he should go to prison for that. But our debate is about trafficking and rape, and you're using this kind of charged language, to say he's luring people for marriage, and he has shown that he's very interested in marriage. He potentially has multiple wives.
That doesn't mean that he hasn't married every girl. Yeah. Oh, here, James, you can do another ramble, and then we should just watch this like 2 or 3 minute clip. Like it's just such a clear outline of like how he's like his pimp model works. Like it's just very obvious.
Yeah.
Once you hit the
you can't even
green share button. If you want to click as well, share audio, it'll have like a little checkbox.
Wait, I linked it in the chat on the right. I can't share because of weird things on my computer. So you got to do it.
I can't
got
share
it
either.
Let me open it up.
It's going to like ruin the format on the stream.
What I'll do is I will play it. It's a little bit. Let me just hold it at the timestamp. In the meantime, as I set this up, folks, I want to remind you our guests are linked in the description. Highly encourage you to check them out if you haven't already. Hold on 2 seconds. I'm just going to pause this. 38:17. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll play this, and it'll be slightly, potentially, starting to actually delay on OBS. It's a little bit.
Just play the audio.
You can just play the audio if you want, if that's possible.
It seems like whenever I play a video on YouTube on the same laptop that I'm using OBS, that's when it usually
crashes the stream.
Like that, even without me clicking share on Zoom. I think with OBS and Zoom and then playing a YouTube video, my laptop's just not jacked enough to handle that. So what I could do, and then OBS, right, Daniel, you're running OBS too, is
you can play it on your phone.
Touche.
And then hold it up to the mic, and we can at least hear the audio.
I like that. Very good. Let me just shoot this to me myself in the email. I'll let you guys continue for maybe another minute or so, and then I'll
Also, in that Piers Morgan thing, I don't think he ever explicitly says that he was married. He kind of hints at it. But Andrew Tate, but Andrew Tate has explicitly said in the past in other interviews, and I'll link you this, he's stated multiple times that he will never get married. And I've listened to his brother talk about the same thing too, that if he ever got married, like he would give all of his... He changed in like 6 months?
Yeah.
He became Muslim? What do you think about him still running casinos?
So
isn't that one of the largest like sins under...
Close friend, yeah, it is. I hope that he closes his casino business, and his best friend,
so
Tam
if he
Khan,
hasn't closed...
don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt. His best friend Tam Khan has said that he intends to close those businesses. It's yet to be seen. If Andrew Tate does not close his casino businesses, then I, as a Muslim, would criticize him for that. I would say that's highly immoral. And I'd have no problem with that. Here's a question for you, Destiny.
Well, hold on, just real quick on the. So he hasn't done that yet. So I don't know why you would assume he's changed. There's no reason to. Also, when he was luring these girls in the past, he wasn't a Muslim yet. He wasn't Islamic. So I don't know why we would assume he was bringing them to marry them like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago if he just recently converted to Islam. None of that argument makes sense.
Well, we don't know if when he plays a role for his Hustlers University or for his social media, he's claiming to be a bachelor, but actually he is married. Like, we don't know that. But here's a question for you, Destiny. Is it, if a man gets a woman to work for her and give her money based on lies like, oh, I love you, or oh, I'm a virgin, is it sex trafficking?
If it's sexual in nature, yes.
So all of these, the whole cam business where you have women who are messaging men, oh, I love you, oh, send me money, oh, I need your money, or like the whole sugar daddy business where a woman in college has these kinds of relationships where a man is paying her and she's reciprocating with sex based on, oh, I love you, you're my daddy, etc. This is all rape and trafficking according to you.
No, can you define it as such? How? I don't understand how camming. If somebody's paying for sexual services, that's not trafficking. That's you're paying for prostitution or paying for sexual services.
But it's based on the high amounts of money that are paid in a sugar daddy type of relationship.
Do you want to talk about sugar daddies or do you want to talk about camming? I don't know why we're bringing these.
It's an overlapping phenomenon.
It's not over. These are two completely distinctly different things.
Well, no.
I have the video.
Cam girls also state that they love these clients, that they try to develop these kinds of parasitic relationships with them for the purpose of extracting more and more money from them. So do you think that's exploitative of a sexual nature?
If they're to make it trafficking, they would have to be soliciting sexual material from the men and then republishing it and then making money off of it. You could argue that it's a form of coercion or fraud. Sure. I don't know if anybody's been prosecuted for that.
Coercion or fraud, and it's of a sexual nature. So those are the definitions that you brought up for.
No, trafficking requires the exploitation part. I can read the definition for you for a third part.
To lie to someone and then play with their emotions in order to extract money from them. That is exploitation.
No. I'm talking about exploitation insofar as it's defined in the Romanian criminal code, because that's what we're arguing about today, not whether or not girls exploit their sugar daddies. Article 182 clearly states that it's forcing persons into prostitution, pornography, in view of obtaining and distributing pornographic material or any other types of sexual exploitation. But that's what exploitation means.
You consider forcing for Andrew Tate to tell someone that he loves them and to mislead them about his feelings for them.
Correct.
You consider that part of exploitation. So I'm pointing out that women can also do that too, and it's actually something that's monetized into entire industries like the sugar daddy industry, like the cam.
If Andrew Tate was just saying that to get girls to send him nudes, that would be different. But he's bringing the girls out, meaning he's transporting them, which is an important part of Article 210, and he's monetizing them, which is another important part of Article 210, I think subsection C, and he's stealing from them, which I think hits subsection B, which counts as a form of exploitation. He's literally stealing. He gives advice on how to steal from their taxes.
That is exploitation. So it's you have no problem with exploitation then if it's done by cam girls.
Exploitation is one measure of sex trafficking as laid out in the Romanian criminal code. If you want to have a separate debate on whether or not cam girls are exploitative, or on whether or not the CIA or the FBI killed MLK, hold on. If you want to talk about any of these other topics, we can, but I came here with a whole bunch of evidence and a whole bunch of information relating to Andrew Tate and whether or not the actions that he's admitted to on camera and that have been leaked by the prosecution and that have been claimed by other second and third party individuals constituted sex trafficking insofar as it's defined by the 2014 Romanian criminal code. I'm not here to talk about MLK, Julian Assange, past actions of the United States government, or weird conspiracy theories. So if you have information related to this, I would be super curious, but none of this is relevant. Talking about cam girls and sugar daddies has nothing to do with
this. But just because we have that video ready, I'm going to play it. This is Andrew Tate on the screen. I know that you can't see that, folks, because I'm playing it from the phone. So let me just turn this all the way up. Okay, here we go.
How do you manage hierarchies, let's say with two girls? Does the first girl have seniority over the second girl? No. Girls won't take that. If you have one girl who's clearly better than the other one, you're going to struggle massively. The second girl is just not going to stick around for very long. I've had it where I've had girls who say, oh, I know you're with Vivian. I know you've been with her a long time. I don't mind. I'll stay out tonight. You two stay alone. All that shit. But it never lasts long. Because the ones who are really in love with you won't do that. So the only girls who do that aren't really in love with you. You have to be such an imposing, dominating force that there's no room for hierarchy underneath you. You have to be like, when I say imposing and dominating, I'm not talking about being a psycho. I just mean your personality has to be so large that you're in charge of everything. There is no hierarchy. How can there be a hierarchy? You just have to be like, okay, I need a coffee. You make me a coffee and you cook me something. If you send one to make the coffee, then there's a hierarchy. Either way, if you send one to make the coffee, it can either be seen as you trust her more and want her more, or she's lower than the other one because she's a slave. Women will always just make up a reason. So it doesn't matter which one you choose, they'll decide it's negative. So you have to send them both. Go make me a coffee. Who? Both of you. Go. You have to be like that. You have to be dominant to a point where there's no room for hierarchy. It's just you and everyone else. Now that's easy for my personality. For other people it can be slightly harder, but There's a whole bunch of stupid, fiddly shit you need to learn to do if you want to truly have 2 girls in the long term. You got to learn to sleep on your back. You can't sleep on your side. If you sleep on your right side, I'm telling you now,
There's like 30 seconds left.
When you're sleeping,
And you talked about that female girl.
Maybe not the first night, but by night 10 she will. Well, you're always facing her and you're hugging her and I'm on my own. And this is a little dumb shit you have to deal with. But basically, you have to be big, large enough personality that you handle it. There is no hierarchy. You can't clearly have women below women. They don't like that shit. What you do when you're in my situation, where you have a girlfriend of 6 years, and you try and bring a new girl in, you actually have to downplay your relationship with the girl of 6 years, which is difficult. And I only get away with that because the girl of 6 years plays along. So Vivian's been with me 6 years. She's completely head over heels in love with me. She wants kids with me, everything. And we met and we felt whatever, we're in love. But when a new girl comes, she'll go, oh yeah, I started off working for him.
How long is this?
It's ending now. Just
we'll super downplay us so that the new girl feels like, well, they're just kind of work and sex. And now I'm here and he likes me. And she can believe in her mind that she can be equal. If you were if Vivian was completely honest, well, he's been with me 6 years and we're going to be together forever, so you're just a side bitch, then it's not going to ever work.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, you can end here.
It also depends how much control you have over your bottom bitch, because you have to be able to have
There's the pimp terminology, but yeah.
Any more?
So can I just respond to that without interruption?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we have to distinguish between what is the standard practices within a cam business versus what is considered trafficking, because the kinds of things that he's describing in terms of managing women in a cam business, how do we know that that's just not the standard like best practices of managing a cam business? Just in the same way that you have, there's a veil between any kind of major company or major business and the employees. Anyone who's worked in the corporate world knows this, that you can't be 100% transparent with your employees. Like, for example, you can't let all of your employees know how much salary each person is making. Why? Because that creates all kinds of problems for the functionality of the team. So management typically, like if you work in corporate America, the management is not going to disclose what each employee is making. And if you ask, they won't tell you, or they are allowed to mislead you about that. There's all kinds of best practices for keeping your employees happy and motivated to work. And some of that will involve deception as a part of best practices that are taught in managerial schools and MBA programs within standard business. The only thing that's different about a cam business from a purely Western materialistic perspective is that you're dealing with sex. And that will involve emotions, and that will involve a kind of relationships that makes it more tricky and more complicated and potentially more damaging. I acknowledge that, which is why I think that pornography should be banned, because I don't think it's just Andrew Tate in his particular webcam business that is employing these practices. I think these are standard practices for any kind of pornography business and webcam business. And if you want to consider that exploitative and trafficking, fine, but that means you'd have to ban all of pornography, all of webcamming. Just be consistent with your standards. Don't have this attack on Andrew Tate and say, oh, see, he's using this kind of dishonesty, or he is veiling his true intentions just for the purposes of manipulation. Don't have that kind of standard for Andrew Tate, when in reality, these are practices, best practices for all of pornography. Anything that involves that level of sex and money together is going to be complicated in that kind of way. And I keep bringing up exploitation that women use in these same industries against men to exploit men, and Destiny seems to think that that kind of exploitation, there's no problem, it can be legal. Yeah, it's fine if the women are lying in order to extract money from men, to defraud men essentially through dishonesty. There's no problem, that should be legal according to Destiny. But if a man does it, then that's a problem and he needs to be put in prison for 10 years.
Yeah, I don't know why you keep trying to say what I think should be legal or not in regards to women exploiting men. That's not what we came here to discuss. I haven't entered any statements about that. You have no idea. I don't care what you think my opinion is. If you want to talk to me on another time or in another debate, we can go over that. But that's not part of this discussion, so I'm not here to answer that question. When you say that it's standard practice, can you think of a single other pornographic studio in the world that manages their talent this way?
I imagine that it's.
I don't care what you imagine. Okay, so it's not most of them. Women on Pornhub are
How do you know?
individually.
How do you know?
Because I'll tell you. The women that do OnlyFans aren't managed in this way. You can be an independent creator. You don't have to move anywhere. The women that work on Pornhub are all independently managed. For larger companies and studios like Brazzers and other people that manage talent, you never fly them around the world and keep them locked up anywhere. For the girls that work on My Free Cams or OnlyCams.
Where's your proof?
My proof is
How do you know those companies don't do that? How do you know?
Because
those
one, I know people.
Pornhub was investigated for child pornography and all kinds of illegal practices, and they were demonetized. Their payment processors closed them down. It was a huge scandal. Pornhub was involved in all kinds of criminality.
What do you think Pornhub was involved in? What do you think Pornhub was involved with?
They were involved with child, having
how were they
videos
involved?
of child pornography.
Yeah, how were they
and
involved
not
with
taking
that?
it down.
There you
not
go.
Taking those
so
videos
Pornhub themselves did not produce any of that, right? Whether it's criminality or not,
they're profiting off of it.
They're profiting not anymore. That's why they have very stringent application things. Also, for the audience, notice how you just pivoted again to something completely irrelevant. The reality is that there is no.
Pornhub, bro.
There is. I brought up Pornhub as an example of a place
of a great
where
model of pornography,
where an individual
ethical model of pornography. That was what you brought up.
Gentlemen, hold on, just to be sure they can hear each of you.
I know you're really triggered about porn. If you want to do a porn debate, we could have just done a porn debate, but I'm not here to do a porn debate. I'm here to do a sex trafficking debate. You made the argument that this was standard practice. I know from personal experience it's not standard practice, and I know from every woman that has ever spoken being in these industries it's not standard practice, but you are right in a way, you just don't realize how you're correct. In a way, what he's doing is standard practice. It is incredibly standard practice for pimping. And if you watch any interviews with a pimp, if you watch the terminology that Andrew Tate uses, if you see the entire guide that he had on his Cobra PhD website that's now taken down, that I've linked to an internet archive of, if you're reading the statements there, that is a guide on how to pimp. Terminology that he uses like bottom bitch, the idea of bringing in one woman to lure another woman in to work for you, the idea of having women that think that they're part of a relationship with you and then moving them to another country to do sex trafficking, all of that is standard practice, but it's standard practice for pimping. So you don't have any examples of any studios anywhere that do their sex content like this, despite you saying it's standard practice and that you imagine it so. I don't know why you're imagining about porn. That sounds like it would be haram or something. But yeah, the idea that this is standard practice, you can't think of anybody that does it. I know that that's not true. I just named you like 3 or 4 different organizations that have women that do this that aren't managed in that way. And everything you're saying is standard practice, but it's standard practice in regards to pimping.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it funny how you mentioned like 2 main companies, and one of them, Pornhub, was involved in a major scandal of violations of ethics.
It had nothing to do with sex trafficking.
Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt. Also, there are many people who complain about being exploited by Pornhub. You can just Google it. I was exploited by Pornhub, and these are quote unquote independent creators. Like just Google someone like Mia Khalifa who says that I was exploited by Pornhub. So there's plenty of testimony from these former porn actresses who say that I was exploited by these companies.
Did any of them say that they were moved to another country and forced to work in a basement? Or
they said they were exploited. They said that they were coerced. They said that they didn't know, they were preyed upon by these companies.
Preyed upon or coerced how?
All of those statements. Ask them. They're saying that they were.
You're the one citing them, so I'm asking you.
They were promised all kinds of celebrity status and all kinds of riches. They were lured into the pornographic industry at a young age, at 18 years old, and they didn't know better. And they are arguing that these companies are all exploitative.
Okay. So we just have nothing on Andrew Tate. Do you think that sex trafficking is even real? Is that like a real crime ever?
Yeah, it's real. If you go grab someone off the street and you put them in a truck and you drive them to Mexico and you sell them into sex slavery where they're chained to a radiator, yeah, that's human trafficking. But by offering someone a position in a lucrative business, I think it's haram. I think it's completely immoral. I disavow girl business or pornography. But according to Western law, that's not considered human trafficking. That's not illegal. It's only when you start broadening the definition of what constitutes fraud and what constitutes coercion. Like, oh, you said that you would marry her, but you didn't marry her, so therefore you sex trafficked her. Like, this is the kind of evidence, quote unquote, that you have against Andrew Tate.
Well, no, my evidence is him giving a guide. We can watch another clip if you want about how he talks about how
he's giving a guide about his cam business. Like, that's standard practice for
standard practice for pimping. What you said earlier was not true.
Is pornography not pimping?
No.
Is pornography not pimping?
Because you're not lying or deceiving or coercing the women into it. If you are, then it could be
There
a
are
form of
plenty of
pimping. But
honest pimps.
saying that there can be honest pimps, that's fine. It doesn't matter. And thankfully, even in the Romanian
So then
criminal
why are you
code,
saying-
even
why
if
are you
somebody that you have
accusing
pimped
him-
has said you're not pimping, that has no impact on whether or not you get charged with sex trafficking or not. You
All
said
you said
earlier
is
that
that,
it was
oh, Andrew
standard
Tate is
practice. You said it was
describing
standard
pimping,
practice in
therefore
business to deceive or lie to your employees or to lie about other things. That's not standard
No,
practice in
I
business
said
either.
there's a veil of dishonesty.
There is not
There's
a veil
of
of dishonesty. That's not true. And depending on how you lie, you can get prosecuted for that. I don't know what you mean by veil of dishonesty. And whatever veil of dishonesty you think you can come up with, by the way, if you were to fire an employee for discussing wages with another employee, pretty sure you can get you can get in big trouble for that. If you want to talk about like a veil of dishonesty, that's fine that maybe they aren't completely forthcoming with some things, but that's far different than saying that I bring a woman intentionally to deceive the other woman in order to get her to work a sex business for me. I don't know I don't know what world you can live in where
So
you
think
listen
that
to him say that.
these women are coming to first of all, Andrew Tate is inviting them to come to Romania. They don't know who Andrew Tate is. They don't know that he's a multimillionaire. They don't know how he's got his money. They don't know his involvement with other women because he's posting about it constantly on his social media. They go to Romania, they see a house with 70 women, and they don't realize, oh, I wonder what's going on here. What is this? Oh my God, I'm completely surprised. You fooled me, Andrew, about the nature of your living and how you live your life. Like that's the kind of naivete that you think that women
No, it's not
have.
naivete at all.
They're like childlike, ignorant, naive. They can't even make these kinds of basic conclusions that any normal person would immediately be able to understand. And anyway, when they get to Romania, they can leave. He's not chaining them up. He's not locking them up. You could say that, oh, he took their passport. Okay, just go out in the street. You don't know the language, so what? Just you're a beautiful young woman. Say, oh, help me. You don't think people in Romania care enough to help someone who is asking for their help and screaming that, oh, I'm being held against my will. Please help me. Like, this is just so implausible, like this kind of
so none of this is implausible. So when you say that like they just show up and they see 70 women, that's not how it works. Who they're allowed to see, where they're allowed to go, who they're allowed to hang out with is all incredibly carefully controlled for. We know this because there were logs leaked by the prosecution that shows Andrew Tate talking to Vivian, telling her like, hey, show this girl to this place, take this girl to this area. We know this because in Tristan's God Mode podcast, he talks about how you can have 5, 6, 7, and 8 different women at the same time by scheduling different times of the day to be with them so that every single one of them feels like they're special and unique to you. He's got a whole podcast. We watched the entire thing where he gives tips on how to manage multiple women at the same time. And we know that there were explicit threats made that if women weren't making enough money for them, one was Andrew Tate saying that that somebody would be thrown out the window. Another claim was another woman tried to leave and they said, you're not allowed to leave this place ever unless you go with either Vivian or one of the 2 security that are here. So no, women were forced to be there. We've got a third party. I can't verify that, but a third party.
That force. Where was the force? All you mentioned is like deception. All you mentioned
the force is somebody saying that the
details.
force is that you're not allowed to leave the house or else we're gonna throw you out of the balcony. Or the force is that like you.
Where's that? Where's the proof of that? Where did Andrew Tate say you're not allowed to leave the house? Otherwise, we're gonna throw you off the balcony. That's like a threat of assault and possibly homicide.
Sure. So in one of the hold on, I can find the balcony quote if you want.
So while you're looking for that, you can look at thedailybeast.com, sexual coercion epidemic in porn, exploitation, coercion,
What does
and
any
fraud
of this have to do with what we're
systematic in
talking
porn.
about?
Yeah, what does an article about porn have to do with the cam business?
We're not
You're
talking
right,
about
Destiny.
porn,
Great
and we're not
point.
talking about the cam business.
We're not talking about porn at all.
No, we're not. We're not talking about the cam business
Great
either.
point,
We're talking
Destiny.
about Andrew
You got
Tate
me.
and sex trafficking. So here was
You
one
got
of the
me.
conversations that were recorded. This has to do with the policewoman that was arrested alongside the Tate brothers, and it has to do with another woman that was doing work for them. Let's see. RL is the policewoman. You're free tonight to sleep. Do not waste time. So that you can be rested for tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday for the weekend. The other woman, not the victim, but another one of the pimp helpers is, so clearly there is no longer a problem with recovery. And then the victim says, you mean? But I didn't say I'm not going in today at all. And then the policewoman says, well, how much do you have to recover so far? Don't lie to me because you didn't do anything today. And then Andrew Tate says, did you tell the new hooker that you made a lot of money? The second part of this conversation is they talk about...
Is this from a video or a
these are
report?
logs that have been released from the prosecution. I can go ahead and link you this right here if you want.
Yeah, so logs are not these kinds of logs are highly selective. We have to see the entire context of the conversations that are happening. You can't just take a quote from a WhatsApp message and say that, oh, this is evidence that he is threatening assault and
Okay, so when he says, so one of the statements by the police ladies was, punch yourself in the mouth until I arrive, because then I'll give you another 10, you incurable slacker. I'm going to break you when I get there. The victim says, what did I do? She says, you have 1 hour and 10 minutes to disappear. But what did I do? Better said, what did you do yesterday for an hour? You're 20% down, 4 days since you posted. And then another lady says, I'm waiting for the money from yesterday. And then the police lady says, if Andrew looks to see if you've posted TikToks, you won't have time to pack. You're flying off the balcony straight away.
So the policewoman said that.
Yes.
So Andrew Tate did not say that.
They're all part of the same criminal enterprise.
Yes, the policewoman that works of the criminal enterprise. You're quoting the policewoman. The policewoman said you better pack up, otherwise he's gonna throw you off the balcony.
Oh, you don't know anything about this case at all. Policewoman is one of the people arrested. You don't even know who was arrested with Andrew Tate. You have no idea what you're talking about. Holy shit! I just realized that. Fuck.
I can't even tell if you're talking about the police, a police report, or what.
Never mind.
You're just reading a line. I don't know what it's from.
You asked me to read the logs, but I just realized you don't even know who was arrested with the person.
I asked you to show me the proof.
I did show you the proof. I literally linked you the things right here.
You said that policewoman said it, not Andrew Tate.
No, they're all part of the same criminal enterprise, though. That's part of what they're being charged for. Was the criminal organization?
Andrew Tate, right? That's what you keep referring to. We're talking about
the
Andrew Tate.
debate is about Andrew Tate and sex trafficking. Okay. Sex trafficking. Sex trafficking typically requires an organization to do it. This is Andrew Tate's organization. There are other logs that show the hierarchy of said organization and how these women report to Andrew Tate. We can go over those logs as well, but I don't think you're familiar with any of these things.
No, all you're doing is citing. I don't know where these documents are coming from.
They're logs leaked, chat logs leaked from the prosecution.
Yeah, the prosecution. Wow, I wonder, if they're giving the entirety of these messages, entirety of these statements that are being made. How can you take what the prosecution selectively decides to leak as evidence, close-cut case that Andrew Tate is threatening his girl to throw girls off of balconies if they don't?
Because I'm combining it with everything else I've heard so far. I'm combining it with Andrew and Tristan's own testimony.
I'm combining it with everything I've heard thus far, and it's not evidence. It's not compelling to me that this is proof that he is engaged in any
I agree. It's not
coercion.
100% compelling. That's why we wait for the trial. But based on everything that's been released so far, seems pretty bad. We absolutely don't agree. You don't even know the facts of the case. We can't possibly agree.
You don't even know how the U.S. is involved in this case.
You haven't been able to tell me either. All you're saying is that the United States funds organizations that fight sex trafficking abroad? Yeah, no shit, Sherlock Holmes. That's the most obvious thing in the world.
United States funds the Organized Crime and Terrorism Investigation Directorate in Romania.
Okay, so then let me return to this was the very first question.
You don't even know this. You're not even aware of this.
I do. I literally.
You think it's irrelevant.
If you want,
you said earlier that this is completely irrelevant. That the U.S. is involved. That there's no political considerations to be taken into account here. That's like your worldview. Like that is so naive. Like don't tell me about not knowing the facts of the case. So you don't even know who's prosecuting.
By the way, here you go. There's the Twitter thread. I know exactly where you're pulling this conspiracy from. I've read the entire thread.
It's not conspiracy.
There is no evidence.
State.gov/report.
I know how excited you are. Yes.
What kind of conspiracy theory is this when I'm citing the
conspiracy that you're alleging
is the conspiracy theory?
I'm telling you.
One sec, gentlemen.
You think it's a conspiracy that the U.S. is involved with DCOT?
No. But that's not what you're alleging. The conspiracy that you're alleging is that the United States is pressuring DICOT to trump up charges for Andrew Tate that have no factual basis. And so what I'm asking you is there a single piece of evidence that points to any political pressure that's causing them to fabricate evidence? That was the very first question I asked, and you talked about 50 million things. I can go back to the very first question again, and we'll do this again. We can play this till the end of the debate. Is there a single piece of direct evidence that the United States is pressuring anybody? Yeah.
Look, just like you can point to these selected WhatsApp messages and
these are hours-long podcasts by Andrew and Tristan Tate. Yeah.
Hold on, let me finish. Oh, well, that's highly suggestive. I'm also saying, look at the U.S. Involvement with this Romanian prosecution. Well, that's highly suggestive. Look at the U.S. Previous history in trying to push false rape accusations against people like Martin Luther King, against people like Julian Assange. Well, that's kind of suggestive. I'm only using your same logic, Destiny, your same kind of curiosity where you say, oh, wow, Andrew Tate said this and that. That's highly suggestive that he's a sex trafficker. I'm using only the same logic. If you want to call that a conspiracy theory, then you're engaged in just as much conspiracy theory as I am.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm using direct logs and testimony from Andrew Tate. I'm using like cutouts from hours-long podcasts that we've all listened to. You're welcome to go and do it if you want.
And none of that is
all of this
anyway.
is all of this
It's highly
is him
suggestive,
speaking. We
according to
literally
your-
just listened to him
One second.
lay out almost everything necessary on its own to prove that he was a sex trafficker. He's literally describing a pimp relationship with a girl that works for him and how he would use deception in order to get other women to think they were closer to him than they actually were. We literally just listened to a full cutout that was not edited, that wasn't from Vice, that was something that Andrew Tate himself recorded and spoke about. So if you're upset about that, that's fine. But if you're going to make claims about conspiracies about the U.S., like pressuring people to do anything, that's fine too, but you need to show me evidence for it. If you don't have any evidence other than the United States works with Eastern European countries to try to reduce the amount of sex trafficking, when these countries are well known as having massive problems with sex trafficking, you're going to have to do a little bit better.
Look, if you are telling us that we just need to trust what Tate says in these logs, and we just have to take Tate's word for it of what he's describing of his relationships, of his business practices, fine. Let's take Tate at his word. Guess what? In many places, Tate also says that he is playing a character, that he is just putting on a persona for the sake of selling his business and selling this kind of lifestyle, that he is role playing. He says this in multiple interviews, including most recently on Piers Morgan. He describes his entire activity online as a performance. So if we want to take Tate as his word and convict or impeach him on his word, then these are also things that Andrew Tate has said publicly. So this is the weakness of your case, Destiny. Like, you're just taking what Tate has said in all of these videos. Yeah, I've seen them all as well. Everyone's seen them. But the point is that, fine, that is not enough to prove, as you've acknowledged yourself, that's not enough to prove that he engaged in sex trafficking. And in any court of law, there's a presumption of innocence. There has to be he has to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But there's plenty of doubt that's created by all of these contextual factors that I'm bringing up. And all you have is, oh, listen to this video. Oh, look at this selected snippet from a WhatsApp log. That's the only thing that you have. Fine, I'll concede everything that you have pointed to Tate's videos, his WhatsApp messages. Fine, let's pretend like those are all in context. They're incontrovertible. There's no kind of manipulation of that data. Let's take it at its face value. It still does not prove that Andrew Tate is a sex trafficker, because he says publicly that he's playing a role.
You have parody. I can just restate everything. You can say it's all parody or whatever, but I mean, he did grow that huge webcam business. He does give full, before he was ever an internet content creator, he gave full videos explaining how his entire business works. He spoke multiple times about moving to Romania in order to avoid certain types of laws that he seems to be trying to exploit now to run his business. Every single piece of evidence seems to point in one direction for Andrew Tate. And if you want to turn a blind eye because you're happy to have a new convert, I mean, that's fine. But nothing you've really said today has given me any factual basis to believe anything that I've said is incorrect, and it seems like you have nothing insofar as that other than alluding to vague conspiracy theories or black guys have been dead for over 100 years or whatever, or 80 years. So yeah,
that's Martin Luther King is some black guy that died 100 years ago.
So I guess 6 years ago. But yeah, I don't think MLK is connected to the Andrew Tate sex trafficking case today as much as you might want him to be. But yeah,
or Julian Assange, that's irrelevant.
If there's any other evidence, although I don't think he has.
Do you think Assange is?
I didn't come here to discuss Julian Assange today.
That's fine. So
this might be an opportunity to go into the Q&A, unless you have any final thoughts to draw together the threads from the debate, each of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I made my case. Like all the evidence that Destiny claims to have are just statements from Tate that are highly
direct evidence.
That's direct evidence when he says he's playing a role, that he's doing a parody. That
he's not playing a role in those videos. That's not him playing a role. That's him talking explicitly about how his business works, and other people have come out and said as much. The leaked logs from the prosecution seem to say as much. Statements from the victims seem to say as much. Other things that have been released from other people that aren't even involved in this seem to say as much. There's a 16-year-old girl who was the daughter of a Romanian politician that said that Andrew and Tristan Tate are shooting out spam messages to girls on Instagram, trying to get them to come and work for them. Like, the idea that like none of this stuff is like, oh well, maybe he's all just playing a character, when his entire life has consistently led to this moment, and now he's gotten arrested and is being prosecuted potentially by the Romanian government for sex trafficking, is just hilarious that you would buy all of that, like, oh, he's playing a character. Isn't that exactly something that a criminal that's an online social media influencer would say? Why would you not be critical of that statement at all?
Before the charges. He said that before these charges
Did he
came
say it before the investigation?
He says that.
He said that after he got banned from social media. Don't you think he might have just said that so that he could get unbanned from social media?
No, in older clips, he says the same thing. In older clips, he says that he's playing a character. Like, this was the whole issue with the UK case where he was accused of beating a woman. and that video came out that, oh, he's hitting a woman, and he explains that he's just role playing. So
I
this is
mean,
prior
he says
to the
that,
sex trafficking. That's prior to the sex trafficking, and the police dropped
Sure,
the
but that-
charges
sure.
based on text messages between the women who were accusing Tate, showing that they were colluding to actually attack him.
Yeah, so that
the
is
case
that
was
is
dropped.
hold on. So that is not true. So the text messages or the accusation that they were trying to collude to make up a charge is something that Andrew and Tristan Tate say, but that has never been substantiated. The statement
What
given
has been
by
substantiated is that the case was dropped.
Sure, the
And
case
there
was
were
dropped.
there were no charges. He was not arrested for
Yeah,
that.
that is
The case
true. That the case was indeed
yeah.
dropped, but it doesn't mean that there was collusion among those girls to fabricate charges against him. Plenty
Yeah,
of cases like this
I
get dropped.
acknowledge that it was
Okay.
a claim.
Sure.
I acknowledge that. So,
Yeah, but I mean, like
the thing is that-
every single statement that the Tates have made seem to point consistently in this direction. I mean, I
No,
just
you're
I just
ignoring
kinda,
a
like,
lot of
follow.
their statements. You're
No,
ignoring a lot
I'm
of their
ignoring the statements
that put
where they're
context-
saying like, "Oh, don't take us seriously for everything," which is the childlike naivety that you have, or the desire to, I guess, like ride these guys is hilarious because like the idea, like, well, he said that he didn't mean it when they've got hours of content, hundreds of hours of content, thousands of dollars
Yeah,
in
it should be a
courses,
case
when they've got all
closed,
these
right?
things that are set up in terms of like how to
Case
run your own
closed.
pimping or trafficking business, and everything they seem to
So,
say, it's like seems
You
to line
read
up with
the
that.
report, right?
Yeah.
You read the report, right, Destiny, from the prosecution. Did you also read the judge's report where he said that there's not enough evidence to actually charge and prosecute Tate or indict and prosecute Tate? Did you read the judge's statement about that? And that's why his detention was extended for another 30 days as the prosecution looks for more evidence. So if it's such a clear-cut case and all of his statements are basically incriminating him online, there's hours of evidence, then why is the prosecution not going to trial? Why do they keep
Hold
extending
on, you
it?
said there's a statement from the judge saying there's not enough evidence for a case right now. Can you link me that?
Yeah. Let me pull it up.
Also, how do you know he's not just role-playing being Muslim? How do you know he's serious about that?
I mean, you really can't tell what is in a person's heart. So you have to take people at the face value, what they say publicly. So he said publicly that he's playing a role, and I take that as at face value, just like you take his other statements at face value.
Okay, but how do you know that he's really a Muslim then?
Really a Muslim? You can't know anyone is really a Muslim. You can't know if I'm really a Muslim. How can you know what's in my heart? And
Well, you seem to defend him a little bit on the basis, at least, that you were happy that you want to defend a Muslim brother. You said that at the beginning of this conversation.
But even if he were not a Muslim, I would defend him.
Sure,
And
but you said
I
in the
have
beginning, you
also
said Muslim brother. So it's
criticized-
interesting you would believe a man would convert, and you seem to believe that on its face, which is a pretty astounding conversion. But you're hypercritical of all the statements he's made regarding running his pimping business?
I don't know. You take people at their face in Islam. You judge by what is apparent. So things that we cannot know because we can't see what is in a person's mind or heart. That's irrelevant. You judge by what is apparent. So if you, for example, Destiny said, I'm a Muslim or I'm a Christian or I'm an atheist, I'm going to take you at your word, at the face. You can only judge people by what they show. You can't have these kind of bad assumptions about
So then why do you take him at his face when he says he's just playing a role?
That's consistent. How is that inconsistent? I'm taking him at his face in both cases.
Then why don't you take him at his face when he accurately describes and lays out how to run a pimping business?
I explained. I do take that at its face.
So
that
then
was
you
my
do
whole
think-
argument. Even if you take it at its face, it's not enough to prove that he was engaged in trafficking. That's the whole argument, Destiny. Look, you're a really smart Destiny. I really admire your ability to argue in a debate, but you really are not conversant with the points that I'm making. I acknowledge that take him completely at his face, all of the messages, all of the videos, take him at its face. It's still not enough to prove that he was engaged in trafficking because the standards of trafficking and rape are very subjective.
Okay.
Coercion, fraud, exploitation, these are all contested terms.
They're not. They're all part. They're all part of the Romanian criminal code.
I
You
cited
can go on.
Yale Law Review articles.
What is Yale Law? First of all,
Harvard
you
Law
didn't
Review
cite any of these articles. Also, secondly, these things. We're
Yes,
talking
I
about
did.
Romanian criminal law. We're not talking about the U.S. criminal code.
I've talked about the U.S. trafficking laws that dictate what Romanian prosecutors do through DICOT, through
You
the
haven't
prosecution
shown
within
anything,
Romania.
though, that they're
I
being
did.
influenced by the United States to put political charges here.
So again, I have your standards, Destiny. It's suggestive. it's suggestive that the U.S. is involved.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to admit that, all you have is a
prosecution.
suggestion, and that's literally it.
Yeah,
Okay.
everything that you've said is just a suggestion.
No, I've got direct testimony from
I'm
Andrew
fine
Tate.
with that.
I have direct stuff, and you're saying we'll just ignore that he's just
No.
faking it. You just have suggestions.
The
Right.
direct statement, okay, that you said, "Oh, I'm going to throw you off a balcony," turned out not to be from Andrew Tate at all. So you don't
It
have
was
any
from
direct,
his organization.
direct
I've got plenty of direct statements from Andrew Tate on how to run his pimping business. We just listened to
Okay, well,
2 or 3
maybe the
minutes of him talking
employee,
about it.
maybe his employee, part of the organization, spoke out of line and wasn't actually representing the business practices of Andrew Tate.
Okay. Yeah, that
Where's
sounds
the
totally
direct
connection,
connection, Destiny?
The direct.
Where's
We
the
can
direct
go and
you're
read
being,
more.
like, totally autistic about, like, oh, there has to be explicit proof and explicit connection. Okay, we can play that game too, Destiny. Like, where's the explicit proof? Where did Destiny? I need a recorded video of him saying that I am not role playing right now, and I'm gonna throw you off the balcony if you step foot out of this house. That's the standard I need. I'm just applying your standard, Destiny, because you. When you say that there's no U.S. involvement in his case, and I prove to you that Dicot in the Romanian government is directly connected to the U.S. government. You can go to the State Department website that describes the relationship in detail. It's not a conspiracy theory. You say, oh, that's just
Sure.
not
So in a
relevant.
transcript that was leaked, one of the messages that was exchanged was Andrew Tate saying that Tristan and Georgiana are over there, but I lead them. In terms of, another girl asked him, I heard you're the one running the OnlyFans and TikTok girls business. I can link you this article if you want where those logs come from. But yes, clearly there was a hierarchy here. And clearly he is in charge of running and managing these people. These leaked logs are consistent with everything else he's also said too. I mean, I don't know how many logs you want, but I don't think I show you anything that would honestly convince you.
There's nothing that.
Yeah, I know.
There's nothing that
could
shows
change
the
your mind.
coercion that you're trying to establish.
shows
There's
that-
nothing that says that these women couldn't have gone out at any time. Many of them did go out, which shows that they could actually leave the house. And if they were so coerced, like, all you can say is that, he intimidated them so much that they couldn't run away. That's basically the case that you're making. It's highly speculative.
Yeah, well, one of them wanted to
and it's not
leave, and they
evidence.
said explicitly that you're not allowed to be anywhere on your own. You can only leave the house with other people protecting you.
All right, well, if that's evidence, then why can't you accept that the U.S. threatens economic sanctions on the basis of human trafficking? Romania has been threatened to be sanctioned by the U.S. on the basis of human trafficking. How can you not see that that's relevant to this case?
When did the United States threaten to sanction Romania?
By putting them on the Tier 2 watch list on the TIPS report, human trafficking report. That's why I cited. So you don't know these facts about this case. That's the problem.
No. Hold on.
All you know is,
this
like,
has
some
nothing to
videos
do with the
on-
case.
on
And two,
YouTube.
I
Like,
asked you for a year.
that's your
You're telling
research.
me the United States threatened to sanction.
Yeah, any country that is on the Tier 2 watch list is under threat of sanction.
Is under. Oh, so they didn't sanction them. They're
I
under
said
threat
under
of sanction.
threat. Under
Okay.
threat,
So
yes,
they didn't.
yes.
They didn't threaten to sanction them. They didn't
Yes,
sanction.
yes, under threat of sanction. That is what it means.
Okay. So there was no sanction. None of that. All of that is not true. Okay.
Yeah, under threat of sanction is the same as under threat of I'm going to throw you off the balcony. let's just use your standards, Destiny.
Okay.
To go into the Q&A.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
want to say, folks, thanks so much for your questions. Couple of quick housekeeping things as I switch it over into the Q&A. First, our guests are linked in the description box. That includes if you're listening via the podcast, as we put all of our debates on the podcast. And you can find both Destiny's and Daniel's link in the description box there at the podcast as well. This one first coming in from Yeshua.
By the way, sorry, James. Because you asked me for that Romanian judge's statement. So there's a document. I have the PDF, and I don't know how to send it to you through Zoom, but I can just read you the title of it, so people can look it up and download it, where you can find the statement. It's like a long document, just so that we tie up that loose end. Romanian criminal court judge reasoning for 30 days. So this is downloaded off of Dicot, I believe, but it gives the judge's reasoning for 30 days extension. So the reasoning that was given by the judge for extending the 30 days of detention, if you look through that document, he makes that statement that I quoted earlier. He says it in Romanian, but you can translate it.
You got it. This one coming in from. Do appreciate your question. Yeshua the King says the Tates were hypocritical, quote unquote, Christians, and Tate or Andrew, is a hypocritical Muslim now. So I'm not sure why any religious person is defending him.
So I agree that, and I've made this statement prior to his arrest when he announced becoming Muslim, that let's see, Andrew Tate has become Muslim. Is he gonna put his money where his mouth is and follow through by living an actual Muslim lifestyle? If not, then I will condemn him and I'll denounce him for example, having most of his money nowadays coming through casinos. I will denounce him. And I also said that Andrew Tate is not a role model. Andrew Tate is not a role model for Muslims or anyone until he cleans up his act. So there's a grace period for him to be allowed to do that. And, you know, if after a year he's still the same Andrew Tate, then I'm going to condemn him for being, you know, kind of a sleazy figure. That's not a Muslim lifestyle. So it's conditional. My support, any Muslim support of Andrew Tate is conditional that he cleans up his act.
You got it. This one coming in from Yeshua the King as well. I don't know if they're agreeing with you, Daniel, but critiquing the Quran, or if they say, according to Quran 24:33, prostitution is okay. The only thing Tate did wrong was break secular laws, and the women weren't bought slaves or war booty.
I mean, that's completely ridiculous. Prostitution is not allowed at all within Islam. To be a prostitute or to procure the services of prostitution, it's not allowed. I don't know what you're talking about.
This one from Thunderstorm says, at the end of the day, people identify with ethnicity, not an ideology. They change like a Halloween costume. Tate sex abuse of Slavic women and girls hopefully will get Slavic justice.
Is that from
this
you?
One from Bang Boom Ba says, why does Destiny just keep throwing labels at Daniel, also avoiding wider context and calling it irrelevant since he didn't do his homework properly? A scathing critique for you, Destiny.
Jeez.
This one from Jan and his Fiats. Reminder, Destiny, let's see, needs to debate Ryan Dawson again. Okay, well, thanks for that. Turbo says, Destiny pioneered the sandwich-eating debate tactic, and now he's taking advice from Tate and using... Let's see, okay, this is just weird. This one from Huge Head says, we're looking for serious questions here, folks. Says, is Daniel aware Andrew Tate still has girlfriends at home who still publish porno content and make money for him, and still has casinos and still tells others to do the same in his paid program?
Well, any involvement that Andrew Tate or his associates have with pornography, I denounce, I condemn it in the strongest terms. And if things are run according to Islamic law, they would all be punished for that. So I have no hesitancy in saying that very clearly. It doesn't matter if it's Andrew Tate or anyone else who's involved with it. Like, according to Islamic law, that is something completely immoral. It's something illegal, and it actually, within an Islamic society, would have criminal punishment.
This one coming in from, I don't understand your name because it's put it in a foreign language. Let me know what it is. It says, why is Destiny avoiding to discuss Daniel's 3 simple points, which are all logical and backed by public evidence? Shocking. He isn't acknowledging Twitter files and the Assange case.
True.
The Twitter files is a significant, that wasn't a sarcastic comment. I didn't read it as sarcastic. Twitter files is a major news event.
No, they're not. None of the Twitter files released have shown anything that we didn't already know.
Yeah, but it's significant that now what we know has been verified by
what do we
files.
know? What was verified by the Twitter files, you think?
What was verified is that the FBI and the CIA were directly involved with Twitter, meeting with Twitter management to control the content policies of Twitter and actually target specific accounts for banning or shadow banning or throttling. That's what was proven.
And what happened? What happened when the FBI tried to do that?
Twitter cooperated.
No, they didn't. You didn't read the Twitter files. Remember that huge list of, like, what was it, 200,000 users that were all marked as suspect? Twitter took absolutely no action on any of those whatsoever. And on some of the emails that we saw that was leaked to the FBI, they did take action on some accounts, the accounts that they thought were violating the TOS. But if you actually read the emails where the FBI is making requests, Twitter has internal discussion on whether or not to acquiesce to them or not, and they refuse to the vast majority of the time. That's why when the FBI sent that list of 200,001, in the FBI email they say themselves that no action was required. It was just updating them on information they thought was suspicious, and 2, Twitter didn't take action on any of those accounts and they didn't suffer anything for it. If you have evidence of Twitter taking action on mass accounts to the behest of the FBI, that'd be great. But one of the things we learned from the Twitter file leaks was that 1, that FBI was not involved whatsoever. Nobody made a request relating to the Hunter Biden story that originally got censored, and 2, that the FBI would make multiple requests for Twitter to censor content, and Twitter would not censor it. Most of the emails fighting back are them saying, we're not going to do this, we're not going to censor these, we don't think these violate our TOS, and then the internal discussion thereof. But if you've only read the headlines, you probably wouldn't know that.
I mean, the thing that's so funny about your argument is that you're saying, oh, no, the FBI and the CIA didn't ban specific accounts. Those accounts just violated the TOS. But the thing about Twitter's TOS is that there are meetings that the FBI and the CIA had about the TOS, and Twitter adjusted their TOS on the basis of CIA and FBI recommendations.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with the FBI and the CIA controlling what can be said online?
Controlling what can be said online is a far jump from they might update their TOS with recommendations from our intelligence agencies. If the FBI or the CIA says like, hey, just so you know, there might be some Islamic terrorists that use accounts in these ways, maybe you'd want to account for that, and Twitter updates their TOS accordingly, I don't know if that's a bad thing. Now, if you want to show me a specific change that Twitter had made to either their community guidelines or their TOS, you want to say that change was made by the FBI and that was a bad change, I'd be curious to hear any. Do you have any of those examples?
No, I just find it amazing.
That's what I thought. Okay, so then move on to the next topic.
Yeah,
I have no
I have
idea
many
what you're talking
examples.
about.
No, you don't.
Oh, go ahead. Give me an example. That I'm curious.
You have no problem with the FBI and the CIA controlling Twitter's terms of service.
So here's the broad claim, no evidence,
controlling
and
by
then the
highly
rant.
suggesting.
Here comes the rant for the conspiracy that you have no evidence of. Go for it.
Like,
tell me about
bizarre.
how the FBI controls freedom of speech on Twitter, and tell me how Twitter does all these things. Yeah. Oh,
questioning election results. Questioning election results. The FBI said that this should be considered a threat to our democracy. It should be considered extremism and calling to terrorism, and it should be a violation of your TOS. Twitter changed their TOS according to the FBI's recommendations. Do you agree with that? Do you think that no one should be allowed to question any election result in any election?
No, you can question the election results if you want. It just shows
you can
up
on Twitter.
You can.
It
just shows up. There's
based
a little
on
thing.
The FBI recommendations. So you don't know what you're talking about.
Do you see how you're talking over me because you know you're wrong? If you put
just
things
like you
relating
talk
to
over me, I'm just reciprocating your
going.
tactics. Your own debate tactics. I'm just reflecting them back on.
You want to talk about like,
but you can't take.
You want to talk about Schwab or the WEF or the Federal Reserve?
You can't take your own
that.
medicine. You can't take your own medicine.
We must move on to the next one. This from your old foe, Apostate Prophet says, Tate says on his website that he seduces women who have never done sex trafficking before to turn them into online sex workers. Daniel says maybe he brings them in to marry them. Of course, I believe Daniel. LOL.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Like, what is exploitation? Is being dishonest in a sexual relationship count as exploitation and rape? If that's the case, then there's all sorts of rape cases that will be filed, but the U.S. legal system and no Western legal system actually takes dishonesty to be to become fraud or to reach the level of fraud and be actionable in a court of law. So being dishonest is not necessarily illegal. It's immoral. We can agree on that. Andrew Tate's actions were immoral, but I think the entire pornography industry uses these types of tactics, and that's why many people involved in that industry, including these poor little women, previous porn actresses, say that they were exploited and they were coerced, and they have filed claims against all of these webcam businesses and pornographic companies, like the major ones.
No, they haven't.
You can Google it.
That's not true.
You gave one example of Pornhub. You gave another example of some other company, and those
Brazzers, Reality Kings. There's like massive studios everywhere that all run their shit that don't like fly women all over the world to lock them in basements. Like it just doesn't happen. People might complain. They've
been accused of exploitation.
Yeah, people might be suing over like wages and stuff
just
or whatever.
Google it.
But if you want to just say that exploitation is the same thing as sex trafficking, it's like insanely hilarious to me. But I mean, you can pretend that if you want.
Critical to the definition of sex trafficking is exploitation and proving exploitation, proving fraud and proving coercion,
and proving that I'm going to get a VAC ban, and proving that I'm going to get a VAC ban on Steam. You have to prove that I exploited a system in order to use a hack. But a VAC ban on Steam on a video game is not the same thing as sex trafficking. Though how you're trying to tie this in is because, well, when we talk about exploitation here, it's the same as every single crime involving exploitation is just beyond stupid to me. I don't know why you think every form of crime that has exploitation in it is the same, or is even worth talking about in the same breath.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Famo says, Destiny, Twitch girls constantly lure and manipulate lonely, desperate simps into donating, quote unquote, to their stream, wondering if you'd be consistent and call this out for exploitation as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of camming behavior can be exploitative, but I didn't come here to discuss that today, so.
Samir Farsain says, Destiny, you can't moderate and debate at the same time. I don't know what that means. Also, show me your denouncing of what used to happen at the Playboy Mansion. I didn't think so.
Were those girls kept there under lock and key, flown to other countries, and then forced to produce content that they weren't compensated for?
Yeah, Playboy has offices all over the world, and those girls fly all over the world. Yeah, and they could be intimidated.
Where they live there?
Intimidated by Hugh Hefner. There are plenty of previous employees of Playboy who have argued that they were raped and that they were exploited and they were trafficked. You're just ignorant of all of these cases, Destiny. That's the problem.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. They're not even remotely the same, but I mean, I guess to you, anybody that's having like premarital sex is like all the same shit to you or something. I guess I don't know. This is like some
Playboy, yeah,
some like fucking Islamic
Eastern
brain rot or
European,
some shit. I guess.
Are you not familiar with Eastern European girls being exploited by?
Yeah, of course I am. That's why Eastern European women are exploited quite often. That's why Andrew Tate set himself up in Romania so they could exploit Eastern European women. That's why Tristan and Andrew Tate send text messages on Instagram to 15 and 16-year-old Romanian girls so that they can also exploit them. That's what they do.
Yeah,
I am aware of that. Thank you.
All of the U.S. pornographic industry is exploitative by those standards because there are
it's
women
all
coming
the
from
same.
Eastern European. Women from Eastern Europe are coming to the U.S. on all kinds of promises of wealth and fame.
Oh yeah,
and
for sure.
they are burned by that industry and they complain about it online. But you don't care about any of those cases, Destiny. You only care about Andrew Tate.
I came here today to debate about Andrew Tate. I didn't come here to talk about every single form of sexual exploitation in the world.
Trafficking?
No, I didn't come here to talk about sex trafficking. I came here to talk about Andrew Tate's accusations of sex trafficking. If you want to have a broad conversation about sex trafficking, we can. That's
How can you talk about Andrew Tate sex trafficking without talking about the institution of sex trafficking, the legal definition of sex trafficking, the components of the definition of sex trafficking? How can you have a conversation? Because every time I bring up these details of all of these parts of Andrew Tate sex trafficking, you say that's not relevant.
Don't be confused. You're not bringing up any of the details. I'm the one that's constantly going back to the criminal code in Romania. You're the one that's saying, well, there is no definition for this. There are. We can go and read through every article you want. There's definition for all of these things.
There is a definition.
And no, there's a huge difference between talking about sex trafficking insofar as the actual crime is concerned, and you wanting to bring up other sex traffickers. If somebody wanted to debate me on whether or not O.J. Simpson murdered his wife, and you want to talk about the specific charges of murder and what happened with O.J. Simpson, that's fine. But if you want to start talking about another murder, no, that doesn't make sense. I'm not here to talk about all murders. You could talk about the specific crime of sex trafficking, but you don't even seem to think that that crime exists insofar as it's defined by the Romanian criminal code. So I don't know what we're even talking about.
No, I acknowledge the Romanian criminal code.
No, you didn't. You explicitly said that the lack of due process exists.
I let you talk.
Okay, sorry, you're just lying. My bad. Go ahead.
I cited the judge's opinion on the entire case. I didn't say that there's no definition of sex trafficking. I said that there is a definition of sex trafficking, but the critical parts of that definition are subjective and ever evolving standards. For example, affirmative consent. Do you believe in affirmative consent?
Nobody is talking about affirmative consent here. It's not part of this.
That's part of the trafficking. Why? Because trafficking uses the concept of coercion. Coercion. So if you do something against your consent, that is coercion. That's part of the definition of sex trafficking in Romanian law. Now you're saying it's irrelevant. How do you define consent?
No one's talking about affirmative consent here. That's beyond the scope of this conversation. If you need help figuring out what consent means or whatever, I'm sure there's tons of videos on YouTube you can watch if you want to.
You're not acknowledging how contested these terms are.
No, it's not contested here. That's not what's being contested.
Then why isn't affirmative consent the standard of consent?
We're not talking about affirmative consent. It has nothing to do with sex trafficking.
Why are we not talking about it?
I don't know.
It's Biden's definition of consent.
Biden is not the president of Romania.
Do you even know what affirmative consent is?
James.
We must move forward. This one coming in from Famo says, Destiny, if you don't care about the statute of limitations, how would you prove you didn't rape a woman if she decided to lie to defame you 20 years later?
Because you need more evidence than just one witness testimony or one victim testimony. That doesn't, but that is, again, that has nothing to do with statute of limitations. That could be for a crime that happened yesterday or for a crime that happened 10,000 years ago. One person saying you did something is not generally enough to convict.
You got it. Samir Farsain says, moderators, please see Ryan Tyler racist comment in the chat. I checked for that. I didn't see any Ryan in the live chat. So let me know, Samir, if I just can't find it, but we'll obviously ban them if they are. Famo says, Destiny, it's innocent until proven guilty, but it sounds like you're for Andrew being guilty, thus throwing women under the bus, hoping he trafficked them.
You should go back and listen to the very beginning of this debate where I explicitly said there could be other evidence that comes out that changes my mind. That's totally possible. I'm just going by what's released so far.
So you acknowledge that women can lie, right? So it's not believe all.
No,
women.
I don't think women could ever lie. I believe all women and every single thing they say always.
just wanna
What
make
an
that clear.
insightful question. What a really
wanna make
intelligent
sure.
question.
Why-
I don't think
why
any
really
woman.
make sure
I don't
that
think any
that's the
woman could
standard?
ever lie about anything
Because
ever. I don't even think it's
all
possible.
all of the evidence
Uh-huh.
is based on these women claiming that Andrew Tate exploited them.
No, a lot of the evidence now is based on leaked text messages and the statements from the Tate brothers themselves. Although they do kind of act kind of feminine, so maybe you consider them women. I don't know.
The women saying that this was actually exploitation, this was actually sex trafficking. That's what the whole case is based off of, is testimony, verbal testimony.
No, it's not.
And you saying that shouldn't be counted. So
No,
great.
a lot of it is based on testimony
you should,
from the
you should work
Tate
for
brothers
Andrew Tate's
themselves.
defense. Like,
Yeah.
we need to have that standard, Destiny, since you
Okay.
don't believe all women. That's great.
Okay.
Good to hear it.
Yep.
Your blue hair,
This one
made me think
coming in
otherwise.
from
Listen, my blue hair doesn't make me anywhere near as dumb as that fucking thing on your head does. Okay, so calm down, buddy.
Wow.
this one
So
from
you're insulting
Coffee Mom.
Islam now. It's not just me. Your blue hair, I'm not insulting
Absolutely.
an entire religion.
All right,
you have
you
a
both have-
That's what
religion
I do
about
here,
blue-
you know.
Yeah, and
Listen,
it's
Coffee Mom
surprising.
says, "Can't imagine Daniel defending a woman this hard."
No, I would.
This one from Durandell Project says, both. Alex Jones makes the claim that he's just a character, only when he gets into trouble. But we know how he really is. Isn't that the same as Tate?
Yeah, I think it's comically stupid to be like, oh, well, he said he's not doing a thing, or he says he's just playing a character when he's getting in trouble for the character he's playing. Obviously, it's just him trying to get out of like deep shit.
You got it. This one coming in from, appreciate it, Maddles says, I read the whole judge's document. He doesn't say what Daniel says he said. Nothing is said about there not being enough evidence to prosecute.
Yeah, there is. I can quote it for you.
I tried to read through some of the things that I saw, but I didn't see anything about that.
Okay, well, let me cite you the page then.
This one from Fecal Matter Channel for You says, Daniel, please don't defend Andrew Tate. He's guilty. This one from Osama Albanawi says, Destiny, do you believe the influence Andrew Tate has on young men is concerning to certain politicians such that they would prefer that Tate stays quiet?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of politicians that would prefer that Tate stays quiet. Sure.
This one coming in from Samir Farsain says, Ryan Tyler, you're one racist son of a gun, and your comment won't make. I'm telling you, for real, Samir. Like I'm searching for Ryan Taylor. Are you sure that you're not hallucinating?
Are you
I'm
sure that
telling
guy's
you.
not just like fucking with you?
That could be. But John Good says, what is mutah if not prostitution, Daniel?
Mutah is a Shia practice. It's not allowed within Sunni Islam, and it's not, analogous to pornography or webcamming.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question as well. K-Max McDonald says, what in our culture has made figures like Andrew Tate so popular among many young men? Was there a culture he was fighting against?
I think in general, people on the left really suck at talking to majority groups. So white people and men are like really hard problems for people on the left to talk to, and they end up like shitting on them constantly. So it's not very surprising when those people start to look to alternative influences for their media diet.
You got it. Shrouded Grove says, how many porn sites are you subscribed to, my guy? Me? Or Daniel or Destiny? This one coming in from Ahmed bin Mohammed says, question to Daniel, do you agree Destiny lost the debate the moment he showed up as a blue-haired NPC? Alhamdulillah for Islam. I know I said that wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we can have fun at Destiny's expense. Why do you color your hair blue?
It was a charity donation drive. I said I'd do it for charity.
Which charity?
I think it was a charity that raised money to donate money for entertainment for children that were in hospitals.
Wow, that's really a good cause. I don't think anyone should make fun of you for your blue hair. I apologize for the statement that I made earlier.
Well, thanks. I apologize for making fun of your
Turban.
You got it. This
Appreciate
one
that.
coming in.
Thanks, Destiny.
You guys just had a moment. This one from Wes Warlock says, thanks, James. Lots of fun. All credit to the guests, which are linked in the description box, folks. If you haven't checked them out yet, you can open up a tab, even if you're watching live right now, and you can put those links in that tab. So you remember for sure to watch it after this live debate. Jay says, what is Daniel's response to the shocking allegations that Andrew Tate was a founder of Dark Dogwarts?
I don't know what that is. It's like a porn site or
Is that a
webcam
meme or
site?
something, Steven?
Sounds like a dumb meme to me.
Yeah, I don't know
This
what
one
that is.
from Shrouded Grove says, Destiny, if it was your destiny to be destroyed LZZ. Is LZZ a new internet word?
L's,
Is that
maybe?
L's?
Yeah, like
Is
you're
that
taking L's.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you. The Trib one. Gosh. The Trib one says, "Hi, James. For Daniel, can you explain what coercion is? And would lying be part of coercion? Or if lying is coercion at all?"
Yeah, so proving cases of rape requires proving that there was fraud, such as dishonesty or lying, and proving that there is coercion. The problem is that not all kinds of dishonesty would be counted as rape according to Western legal systems. And I gave examples of that. If a woman lies about her body count, or a man says, "Oh, I really love you," but he doesn't, and then you have sex, that's not considered rape, and you can't be prosecuted for that. That is something that is debated. That was the Yale Law Review paper that I cited. It's about this idea of deception. Is deception rape? Or does deception, when does deception reach the level of being actual rape? There was a case in Israel, I referred to it, where a Arab man pretended to be Jewish and had sex with a Jewish woman, and he was actually convicted in Israel for rape, simply because he lied about his ethnicity. So this is something that is highly debated, but my standards for what is considered an appropriate sexual relationship are determined by Islam. And what's superior about Islam is that it gives you very bright red lines of what counts for making a sexual relationship permissible. You have to, agree to a marriage contract. There have to be witnesses. The man has to agree. The woman has to agree in the presence of witnesses, and there has to be an exchange of mahar, or like a bride dowry, to the woman. When those conditions are met, then sex becomes permissible and licit. So it's very clear, like if someone accuses another person of this kind of exploitation, you'd go back to the witnesses, you'd go back to that kind of procedure to make sure that were things above board or not. So that's, those are my standards, but we're debating in context of Western standards in Romania and the US and so forth. So it's not really relevant, those Islamic standards, to this case.
You got it. And thank you very much for your question. The Trib one says, "Oh, they also said, also, this is part 2. If Tate is found guilty, would that influence your feelings for Tate in any way?"
Well, the kind of case that was made against Julian Assange, and I think that Julian Assange should be freed. I think it's a travesty that he is being held. He was holed up for 7 years on these kinds of charges that were just based on the statements of 2 women who actually colluded with each other. He's been, he's in danger of being extradited to the US, where he will face execution. Very likely, Donald Trump called for his execution. So this is something that, is very depressing. I think Andrew Tate, there's all of these problems with due process that would make a conviction highly problematic, even from Western legal standards. Just because someone is convicted, or even if someone pleads guilty to a crime, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have actually committed the crime. This is something that people don't recognize about the legal system in the United States, especially where there's so much pressure to plead guilty. And a lot of times, 90% or plus of these criminals or these defendants don't actually go to court because the U.S. government is pressuring them to plead guilty in these plea bargain agreements. That doesn't mean that 90% of people that are arrested by or charged by the U.S. government are actually guilty. It just means that they've created a situation where it's very favorable to plead guilty in order to avoid having the U.S. prosecution, federal or state level prosecution, coming down on you. So we have to look at the justice system, and that's what this debate, I tried to make it about, the problems with the due process in this case. So even if he is convicted, I would just cite to those problems in the legal situation.
You got it. This one coming in from ES1002 says, question, Daniel, would you still defend Tate if those trafficked women were all 9 years old, since they are mature and capable of consent?
No, because this is, like I said, webcamming, pornography is all contrary to Islam. I have denounced it multiple times. I've disavowed Andrew Tate's business and his entire history with that. So I don't even understand the premise of the question.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Taylor says, how can Daniel defend Tate admitting to recruiting a 15-year-old girl as a bottom B? He said that taking kids was trafficking.
No, so that case, he didn't say that he was using a 15-year-old for trafficking. He said he was in a relationship with someone that is assumed to have been 15 years old. There's no explicit statement where she says that she's 15. It's just people doing math and saying, oh, she must have been 15 years old at the time based on different videos. So there's no proof that she was actually 15 years old. And it wasn't in the context of webcamming. It was just in context of a relationship that 20-year-old or 21-year-old Andrew Tate had with a teenager. And the age of consent in Romania, and I believe in the UK as well, is 16. So it wouldn't be problematic in that way. But again, I don't know all the details. We'd have to confirm how old was that person at the time of their relationship and whether it violated statutory rape laws in the UK.
You got it. Caden Puckett says, Destiny, you want direct evidence that this case is political. Do you deny that the Epstein list cover-up is also political despite the lack of direct evidence for it?
Yeah, I don't know enough about the Epstein case to make solid statements about it. I'd have to do research on that.
You got it. Alexander, I think this is for you, Daniel. They say, quote, the Tate simp is back. Daniel conceded the debate right from the start. LOL in all capital letters. Mutah was allowed at the time of Muhammad by him. Sunnis accept this.
So yeah, the practice, there are a lot of details with the practice in context of war, and in terms of soldiers who are leaving their homes for months at a time. That was a practice that was from previous Islamic times. It was practiced at part of the time of Islam in the early days of Islam, but then it was prohibited by Islam. So that's why Sunnis consider it to be prohibited, whereas Shia Muslims do not. So, I acknowledge that there's a difference between sects of Islam on that issue. But that's not that's not the same as webcamming, because mut'a is just a temporary marriage. It's a marriage between a man and a woman on a temporary basis. That's not pimping, it's not prostitution, it's not webcamming. So I don't know what kind of point you're trying to score. If it's a Christian who's trying to use like a typical Christian apologetics, the Bible allows you to sell your daughter into sex slavery. The Old Testament explicitly allows for that. So how about you explain those practices before you involve yourself in these kinds of debates?
This one from Samir Farsain says, Destiny, understand that we believe that God forgives all sin once a person repents. That's why Daniel is willing to give Tate a chance to change, but you don't.
Cool.
This one from Max.
Also, the quote that I want to, so go to the statement. Someone called me out for lying about the judge's statement on the case. So go to the judge's statement. The Romanian judge who extended the 30-day detention. And on page 4, it says, therefore, the evidence from which the reasonable suspicion on which the measure is based must not present the same level of certainty as that which justifies the prosecution of a person, and even less with that which allows a conviction to be pronounced. So this is, there's an evidentiary gap here that the judge is acknowledging, and that's why the 30 days is extended, so that the prosecution can fill that evidentiary gap. So that's what I was referring to earlier, and you can find it if you Google or you find the judge's statement from the based on the 30-day extension. You'll see that quote on page 4.
You got it. And remind you, folks, whatever stream you're watching on, if you enjoyed the debate, which I'm sure you have, it's been a juicy one, don't forget to hit that like button. And this from Max the Confessor says, Destiny, why do you hate Martin Luther King and Emmett Till? Also, what's your opinion on Daniel's all airtight apologetic on his AOC views?
I don't know.
Wait,
this one from
AOC views? I
don't know
put
what that
anything
means.
Out on AOC, like Alexandria Cortez, like in Congress. Like, what is
I think that's what they need. This one from Lucas Parham says, Destiny, Max Carson, Andrew Tate, Ethan Ralph. Who wins and why? Imagine they mean in a death match.
You're asking about a death match between Max Carson, Ethan Ralph, and who?
Andrew Tate.
I feel like Andrew Tate would probably win, but Ethan Ralph's got some determined man energy, so.
Do you see it? John Good says Allah established Muta during Muhammad's so-called prophethood. How is it Shia when Shia wasn't around at that time? And it's in the Quran, Daniel?
No, it's not in the Quran. You're referring to, I don't know why you're obsessed with temporary marriage. Like, this is not the same as webcamming or this kind of way that you want to portray it. So even if, I accept that muta is part of Islam, which it's not, then how is that relevant to this debate?
This one from Zagros Ozcan says, 65 verse 4, very bright red lines indeed. I don't know what that means. This one from Samar Rao says, I like both Daniel and Destiny, but would love to see them on another topic in the future as well. Also, like and share if you enjoy Modern Day Debate. You betas. Thank you for that. Bubblegum Gun says, Tate kidnapped Greta Thunberg and is now Pizzagate. John McAuliffe says, Daniel, how can you say on one hand Tate can play this character online, but believing he told these lies to women is so out of bounds?
No, I don't deny that he was dishonest to women. Like, he could be very dishonest to women. The whole problem is whether that will constitute a violation of consent. And the thing is that it really doesn't. And there's plenty of legal precedent to establish that.
This one from Fecal Matter Channel for You says in all caps, Daniel, please wake up. You don't make God a favor if you want to stand in justice. Why must women suffer until you know it's a crime? That's so sad.
I think that women suffer just from webcamming in general and fornication. I think women really suffer from that. And I want to, reduce that kind of suffering for women by advocating against pornography and debates that I've had, advocating against fornication and advocating for sexual modesty in Islam. I'm trying to help women. I'm the biggest fan of women.
Nico Samarino says, can you please ask Daniel and Destiny what they think about famous celebrities like Ice Spice speaking out on behalf of Tate? Same with YSL Thug.
I have no idea I don't even know how those words are.
I don't know who those people are.
This one from John Lockhart says, Daniel, do you understand that you keep referencing common law case law, Yale/US, in other words, when Romania has a civil law-based legal code?
Yeah, but the sex trafficking standards that they're using is directly influenced by the U.S. government through DICOT, or DCOT, I can't figure out how to pronounce that. And this is stated on the state.gov website with the U.S. State Department, and the TIPS report, Trafficking in Persons report that the U.S. puts out for the past 10 years, for the past decade, I believe. And what critics of this report have pointed out is that the U.S. Highly politicizes this list to punish their political opponents on the international stage by labeling countries that are political opponents as being tier 3 sex traffickers, because on these very subjective grounds that don't take into consideration like different definitions of rape, different definitions of consent. Some people have argued that the U.S. standards that Romania abides by, that's how the U.S. law is relevant. These standards actually put a lot of voluntary migrants in trouble, because migrants often have to get into sex work in order to migrate to other countries, and they voluntarily do this. But according to the U.S. standards of sex trafficking, they are victims, and they are treated as such, and they're counted as statistics of being trafficked. And where in reality, these are migrants who they recognize that, okay, yeah, I would prefer to have another job other than sex work, but I really have no choice, and I prefer this, as opposed to not being allowed to migrate to these European countries. So there are migrants and immigrant organizations that are advocating against these sex trafficking standards by the U.S. because they don't consider themselves to be victims. And actually, of the 6 people that are considered to be accusers of Andrew Tate, 2 of them have come out publicly, and they have said that even though the Romanian prosecution consider us to be victims, we're not victims. We're actually in favor of Andrew Tate. But this seems to be like a systematic issue where people are categorized as being victims of trafficking according to the U.S. standards when they themselves acknowledge that they are willingly going to these other countries and being involved in sex work, but they're doing that for purposes of achieving a better future for themselves.
You got
just as a clear thing, real quick, there is a specific carve out in the Romanian criminal court, the Romanian criminal code, that says that whether or not the person feels like they're a victim or not is completely irrelevant in determining whether or not sex trafficking has happened.
Right. That's what these organizations bring up. Like these migrants, they don't feel like they're being sex trafficked, and they're being prevented from migrating to different countries. They're being blocked from migration. They view that as a violation of their freedom of movement to go into different countries because they're being categorized as victims of sex trafficking.
Yeah, nobody is seriously arguing this. What's the reason why this is argued? The reason why this is the case is because oftentimes women can be broken down by the men that they are being forced to prostitute for. So those women are oftentimes going to be the fiercest defenders of those people. So for instance, the people that are coming out, those two victims, by the way, which I don't even think are confirmed to be two of the victims that the prosecution is relying on, but two women that have come out saying, oh no, Andrew Tate's a cool guy, like he would never do this. One of them, at least one of them, still works for him. So yeah, of course they're going to say that. Like the quote-unquote bottom bitches are always going to defend their pimp. That's how that entire structure works. If they weren't willing to defend their pimp, then they wouldn't be in the position they were in.
Just go look at the article in The Guardian, The Shadowy World of Sex Across Borders, and it talks about these migrants and migrant defenders, pro-immigration groups that are calling for reform of these laws, of these sex trafficking laws, and they say that it's highly politicized what the U.S. is doing, and it's actually harming migrant women. So that's not my argument. This is what these organizations are saying in The Guardian, The Shadowy World of Sex Across Borders.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. ES1002 says, with Armin Navabi, you told him Aisha was mature.
So there's going to be a debate on Modern Day Debates, moderated hopefully by James. I think it's going to be an in-person debate on the age of Aisha and these kinds of marriage laws in Islam, like minor marriage. We're going to have an entire debate about that with a Christian. And so all of these kinds of points will hopefully be addressed in that debate. But every single debate that I do, like people bring up these types of questions, I address them. So you can go refer to those previous answers, or you can wait until April, I believe, where we're going to have hopefully that in-person debate with James and this inspiring philosophy.
You got it. Alexander says, Daniel, why shouldn't Assange and Snowden get knifed for treason?
I think Julian Assange and Edward Snowden are heroes. I highly respect them. I think it's a travesty what is happening to them. All they did was expose the criminality of U.S. governmental actions on a grand scale. With Assange specifically, he showed how the U.S. government was committing all kinds of war crimes against Iraqis in Iraq with the Iraq invasion. With Edward Snowden, he showed with the Snowden files all kinds of surveillance that the government is doing against the law, against U.S. citizens and people around the world. So they are heroes like other whistleblowers who point to all kinds of criminality done by the U.S. government and people of power. They did that at extreme cost to their lives, and they're paying for that. So for that, I consider them heroes, and an absolute travesty that they're being accused and attacked like this by the U.S. government.
This one coming in from Maddle says, what Daniel quoted is boilerplate legalese that is included in every judicial document. It does not say there is not enough evidence to prosecute or convict.
Well, I cited the judge in the case saying that there's not enough evidence to convict, not enough evidence to remand even. That's coming from the judge. I cited the report, page 4. So the judge in this case agrees with me.
But then why did all 4 of the appeals get denied?
That's a good question when the judge is saying that there's not enough evidence. But again, I would explain that by pressure internationally through the U.S.
Wait, so the judge is pressured so much that he can't release them, but he's not pressured too much to not come out and make a statement that he doesn't believe there's any evidence?
No, he did make that statement, though.
But I don't think he did. I don't believe so.
It's in the document. I quoted it for you.
Can you link me that document?
I have a PDF, and I can't send it to you on.
What is
Zoom.
what is like the name of the document? Just quote me. I should be able to Google this and find it. If he made these statements, it
I
should be
told you
publicly
exactly
available.
how to Google it.
Okay,
Just
tell me
Google
again.
in the extension of the 30 days of
The
Andrew
extension
Tate
of
and
30
the Tate
days.
brothers.
Andrew Tate.
Judge statement.
Judge statement.
In the meantime-
WHRO.org. Would this be?
It should be. Let me keep looking for an actual link instead of the PDF. If it doesn't come up, but it's also on a Romanian site, so that's the problem.
This one from Appreciate It. John Good says for Daniel, Surah 4, verse 24, Allah allows muta, but Muhammad forbids it. Therefore, Muhammad is the God of Islam since they follow what he said instead of Allah.
Yeah, I don't even know what that question means. It's just like interesting. Like whenever there's a debate on with a Muslim, like all the questions are directed to the, on these arcane aspects of Islamic law, and that's the Q&A. Like why is that? Why can't questions be about the actual case that we debated on? So this shows like this kind of bias against Muslim debaters. I'm not saying it's Destiny's fault or James' fault, but it just shows the state of like people's thought process. We can have a debate on any one of these Islamic topics, like the minutiae of Islamic law, but that's irrelevant to the topic at hand in this debate. So why, every debate that I have, do you have this same issue?
This one coming in from Max the Confessor says, Destiny, when are you talking to Nick Mullen?
I don't think I have anything lined up with him.
You got it. This one coming in from Grandma Cooking says, Daniel, do you feel your scope was too narrow for the debate by ignoring specifics of the case, focusing on the angle you wanted to attack?
No, I don't think it was too narrow. Like I focused on the actual definitions of trafficking, the definitions of rape. Like how is that? That's exactly what this case is about. And due process, how is evidence relevant to considering someone to be guilty? How does the presumption of innocence play in all of this? That's what this whole debate is about.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. David versus Games says, is it true that Daniel is a tier 3 sub to Pokemon and participates in the simp culture?
Yeah, I guess.
This
I
one
don't even know what that means.
Let's see. Is T-Bone says, Daniel, have you ever played Factorio?
No, I haven't played that.
This one from Famo says, Daniel and Destiny had a nice moment earlier. The bullets have stopped flying and Destiny looks tired. Let's end it on a calm note. Back me up, James. LOL. We're almost there. We've just got a few more questions.
One thing again about this judge report, it was on Gondol, the Romanian press site. The judge's statement was there, but they removed it, which is why I have a PDF and I can't give you an exact link. But I'm happy to include the PDF, like a link to download the PDF in the description after the debate. So anyone who's interested, you can go into the description and actually read it for yourself and see the judge's statement that I quoted.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Famo says, oh, we got that one. Toxin AV says, Destiny, if there was a door and behind that door Tate was holding dogs hostage for money, how much would an acceptable amount be? Wink, wink.
Good question. It's his top secret number.
I don't understand what that means.
I don't
but
either.
Want to say I've got just a couple more questions here. In the meantime, folks, don't forget our guests are linked in the description, and don't forget to hit like no matter what stream you're watching at. Questily says Daniel absolutely trashed Destiny. Wow, they say the U.S. uses the courts to do political prosecutions,
Nice.
and the victims, quote unquote, were never chained up.
Wow.
Free Epstein.
Crazy.
The Trib one says, I think the issue is ultra specific. These two need to hug it out with a good old meta ethics debate. That'll be the greater unifier for these two debates. Thanks for that. Atheist Allosaurus says, if we are all made in God's image, why aren't we all invisible? Thank you for that. ES1002 is that a parody account of an atheist? ES1002 says, Daniel, what if one of the women was your sister?
Nothing I said in this debate would be different.
Gotcha. I think that's all for the questions. Let me just double check. Otherwise, want to say, folks, thanks for being with us these last 2 hours. Want to encourage you, if you have not already checked out our guest links. This one from Sausage Lord says, Daniel, will you join the Taliban as second commander? What's the Taliban?
That's the name
I
for
don't
my
know.
community, dude.
Oh,
Is
Max
it
Payne
Discord?
says
Discord community?
Yeah, kind of.
this one. This one coming in from. Do appreciate it. Famo says, Destiny, unless you record your entire time with a lady, you can't prove you didn't rape her 20 years ago. And since courts usually favor women, how would you defend yourself?
Courts don't favor women when it comes to rape accusations. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You can't get convicted just because somebody says you raped them 20 years ago.
This one. Max Payne says, James, thanks for hosting another great debate. Yeah, really entertaining and hope to see more in the future. Thanks, all credit to the guests. Do want to encourage you to check them out if you haven't already, as well as, like I said, if you enjoyed this debate, hit that share button, as that'll help other people to enjoy it as well. There's something to the idea of sharing the enjoyment with others that is like the completion of the joy. This last one from Rocket League says, Daniel, why Tate didn't approach A Puss? He is a great girl. Okay, I think that, okay. This one coming from one of Daniel's foes. It says, Dave Willow, Daniel trying to capitalize on Tate's publicity stunt to become Muslim. Sad that he is fooled by an obvious con man and will hurt his own movement.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have criticized Tate before he became Muslim. I criticized him after he became Muslim. So I think I've been pretty consistent. I think, there are several videos dedicated to Andrew Tate on my channel. And this is an interesting case. I think he's a significant figure and deserves to be talked about, and how he's influencing the youth. I think some of the influence that he has on the youth, on just internet culture in general, is bad, is toxic, and I denounce that. But other things that he says, I think, are very valuable and relevant, and we should be discussing it. He's talking about real issues. Unfortunately, those kinds of conversations are being banned on social media. So that's why I, have videos dedicated to him. I think that this debate with Destiny is worthwhile. I think Destiny is a great debater. I think he did really well and made a lot of good points in this debate. I appreciate him, joining me for this conversation. And I apologize for any kind of over talking that I did, or, speaking out of turn with him. So thanks a lot.
You got it. We got, folks, we don't have enough time for any more questions to come in, so please don't ask any more questions. Murgoy Mariah says, for Daniel, if there's a witness, it must be lying. If there's evidence, it's fake. If there's a conviction, it's because of the USA. Where is the logic?
Yeah, that's a good point. There's anytime the US government or, the liberal establishment accuses someone of being a rapist, as long as it's a man and there are women who say that he's a rapist, that means he's a rapist and he's a sex trafficker. Yeah, that's a good point. Believe all women.
Says, when did Muslims become sellouts? Tate bragged about all his crimes on his YouTube channel.
Okay.
This one from Lucas Parham says, Destiny, would you prefer to go to either an Andrew Tate house party or Ralphamania?
Probably Ralphamania. Why not, dude?
You got it. This one coming in from just CJ Candon says, Destiny, Daniel's overall point is that Western anti-trafficking laws are overly broad. Do you think they are?
I don't see any reason to think that. No.
I think that they're by design overly broad because they can allow a lot of leeway for targeting political opponents.
This one from Osama Quasi says, Destiny, would you say your girl, quote, downplays... let's see... Yeah, that's weird. Looking for questions on at least on a substantive issue. This one, fecal channel for you. This is gonna be sincere. It says, hey Daniel, I have a friend here who is a Muslim. At least he knows what crime and wrongdoing is. Why don't you? Okay, let's I'm sorry. It's like the internet's just a strange place. Samir Verstein says, Destiny, a taxi driver was held in a cell for a while this weekend until his dash cam proved he didn't inappropriately touch the client. Word was enough.
Wow. That's crazy.
And this one, CJ, or...
I mean, believe all women, like a lot of men were prosecuted just on the basis of testimony of women. Like this is not like some random thing that people are saying that has no basis in reality. Many of the prosecutions against men in the Me Too era were purely on the basis of women who were engaged in long-term relationships with men, but at one point decided that some kind of sexual assault occurred like 10 years ago or 8 years ago. And that testimony was used in a court of law to prosecute those men. A new legal precedent was created in the Me Too era because of these cases. Harvey Weinstein is the most prominent example. So
Yeah,
that, this is not
testimony
like
from
something that
multiple
that's
women
being made
versus
up.
testimony from a bunch of women, those are two fundamentally different things. It's always been the case that a lot of testimony can get somebody convicted from a crime from different sources. That's not anything new.
Yeah, women can collude on their stories, and this
Everybody's
then you
always
have
been able to
multiple women.
collude. That's not a new thing. Sometimes
Yeah, but
people
it's
cheat the
still
legal
there's the
system.
only evidence is the statements of women.
That's
the
not
problem.
unique to for a lot of crimes. Sometimes you have to go by a lot of witness testimony. But
Or
one,
domestic violence cases, for example. It's just on the basis of testimony of
no,
women.
this
that you
is
can
why
be
domestic
arrested.
violence cases are notoriously hard to prosecute because one person's testimony often isn't enough for
You
a
can be
conviction.
arrested. Like the questioner is talking about someone who is arrested and put in jail purely on the statement of the accuser.
Yeah, anybody can be arrested and put in jail for a night or two, depending on what's going on. But it's a lot
No,
different
for
than
a
convicted
week.
of a crime.
For a week
I don't know.
or
It depends on
longer.
you're not going to get convicted for a crime off of one person's testimony generally.
Your life is destroyed by being put in prison and being like arrested in that kind of way. This is a serious thing that many people have suffered because of this standard of just the testimony of women.
This isn't just the testimony of women. That's not unique to women. This is all crimes. If I call somebody and say, there's a guy in my house, he's beating the shit out of me, holy fuck, and the cops show up and I'm bloody, with no evidence, they'll probably arrest the dude, right? And then they might do a little investigation, figure out the guy might stay in holding for a day or two or a week, I guess, depending on how backed up the shit is. But that has nothing to do with women. That's just how our legal system works.
Yeah, if you did that, then you would be accused of a criminal conspiracy and you'd be punished severely for your false accusation. But none of that exists for women. That's why
Women have been punished for false accusations. What are you talking about? There are women that have been convicted on false accusations.
But as a matter of law, it's not. There is no law in the books that criminalizes these kinds of false
accusations. Of course
accusations.
there are.
That's
It's
why
called perjury. Of course there's a law in the
some-
books. If you make a statement in front of a judge, or if you sign an affidavit, or if you say something on a deposition, you lie. That's perjury.
But the arrest, like we're talking about the arrest and being locked up for days, that can destroy your job. Like you can get fired for your job. You can, be alienated from your entire family. You can be kicked out of your house.
Calling 911
like your
for
life
fake.
is ruined.
Yeah,
your life is ruined by the claim of someone.
There's laws against all of this stuff. It's like all of this is illegal.
No, it's not.
It is. You
This
can
one
literally get in trouble for making malicious reports
be
to
illegal,
911.
but
Like you can, it could be illegal, but it's not a law.
No, but these women are not prosecuted for destroying these men's lives.
Okay.
This one from David versus Game says, "Gone. I love Israel. I love Israel. Gone." What does GON mean?
Gone.
Okay, this one says,
Israel. He loves Israel, dude.
"You got it." Sausage Lord says, "Can Destiny and Daniel do an IRL stream at the mosque?"
Probably not.
This one from, let's see, I think that's it.
I mean,
Endo asks if you guys want
Destiny
to.
is willing, I can answer that. If Destiny is willing, I'd be happy to host him at a mosque, at my house, no problem.
You got it. This one from Famo says, "Destiny, what are your thoughts about Dan Schneider? Many young girls came out exposing him for abusing them as minors, or is that also quote unquote irrelevant?"
I don't know. What are we here to debate Dan Schneider? I don't know what I'm going to say about that.
You got it. This one from, I think this is Endo says, "Are you guys able to steel man each other with 1 to 2 sentences at most?"
Yeah, I can steel man anything if I try hard enough.
You
The Steelman version of his argument is that there exists an international conglomeration of governments and legal bodies and formal and informal agreements that allow some countries through subversive means to pressure the legal systems to bring politically charged charges against enemies of the state. And the examples provided therein were people like Julian Assange, where did he rape somebody, did he not? Maybe, maybe not. But then the question is it really about him raping somebody, or is it about the United States trying to pressure other countries by means of these laws that they might have some influence over to bring political prisoners to heel? So then the question is that what's happening with Andrew Tate? That's the argument, that we've seen arguably these types of charges in the past against certain people like Assange. Maybe we're seeing them right now in the present against somebody like Andrew Tate. If he's truly been involved in camming for 3, 4, 5 years, why are we just now seeing these charges come out after he's reached monumental success on social media? That's the argument.
I don't think Destiny understands what Steelman is, because that's a misrepresentation of the argument. But I did steelman Destiny's argument in the debate. I said, like, let's take everything that Andrew Tate says that you're citing in these videos and in these chat logs. Let's take them as 100% accurate and fully in context. That is still not enough to convict him of trafficking, because the problem in this whole case, the whole weakness of Destiny's case, is that the legal system in Romania, as well as in the US, human trafficking standards is extremely vague. It's violating due process. There's key terms with the definition of rape and trafficking are vague and have to do with psychological factors, psychological conceptions of what is consent, what is coercion. Like, these kinds of ever-evolving standards have created many kinds of legal problems in the United States and internationally, and they're all hotly debated. But Destiny seems to think these are all, very clear-cut, unambiguous, and on that basis, we can take Andrew Tate's testimony and convict him today. But that's not the reality.
I like how my steelman version of your argument was better than your argument. You said I was being inconsiderate, or I didn't steelman your argument. I strawmanned you, and then you didn't even steelman my argument. You just gave another attack against it. That was very funny to me. I'm sorry.
You did attack my argument. You said that I think that there's this international conspiracy to target Andrew Tate, and
I'm sorry, hold on. Conspiracy, I'm sorry. Conspiracy is a thing. Conspiracy is when bodies are planning with each other to do a thing. Like right now, Andrew Tate is being, there's an alleged criminal conspiracy, right? It's when you're making plans to do things. Conspiracy doesn't have to mean a bad thing. So for instance, things that the FBI did relating to MLK, those were conspiracies. There's a difference between a conspiracy theory, or Watergate. Watergate was a conspiracy. A conspiracy, or like a conspiracy to commit crime, that's not a conspiracy theory. Like, yeah. I don't even know if
I understand. I understand what you mean by conspiracy, but my case doesn't rely on proving that the U.S. has nefariously been targeting Andrew Tate, and here are the documents that show it. My case doesn't rely on that. I pointed those factors out just as overall context to show a pattern of behavior with the U.S. government.
Wait, if your case has nothing to do with that, why would you even bother bringing any of that
up? I didn't say it has nothing to do with that. It does have something to do with that. It's the context. But my case doesn't rest on establishing that the U.S. government definitively did this with Andrew Tate and his brother. And here are the emails and here are the documents from the U.S. State Department to the Romanian prosecutor. And this proves it. Case closed. Like my argument doesn't depend on that standard.
Wait, okay, so then so I checked that. Wait, what is your argument then? Your argument is that even if all the things said were true, it's not sex trafficking, or?
No, the definition of sex trafficking is what is in question. The definition of sex trafficking with Romanian law is what's in question. Here's another attempt at steelmanning your argument. Let's say the definition of human trafficking is completely transparent, and well known. Everyone agrees around the world that this is exactly what sex trafficking is. We have no problem with the U.S. using this standard and policing the rest of the world. We have no problem with the U.S. being able to sanction countries who violate human trafficking norms defined by the U.S. Let's say that everything is all above board, and we have this evidence of Andrew Tate saying that he did X, Y, and Z, and that clearly violates the explicit law, that is unambiguous, that is completely objective. There are clear red lines. Then I would say that, that'd be a very strong case, and I'd have to agree that, Andrew Tate is guilty. Unfortunately, that's not the reality.
AMD.com says, Destiny, said, have there ever been false accusations from women in the past that they have hurled at you, and were those false accusations?
People have accused me of all sorts of dumb shit. I don't know. I don't even know. It depends on the year.
This one from...
I mean, that's a good point. Even if Destiny were accused by anyone of this kind of behavior, or, Destiny did this, X, Y, and Z, I'd defend Destiny in the same exact way.
Why? What if I had statements where I said I love to rape women? Why would you defend me?
If you had other statements where you said that you engage in role-playing behavior and that you were doing a parody of this macho kind of guy, maybe you're doing a parody of Andrew Tate.
Oh, cool. So if I say right now, by the way, guys, I like to do a lot of parodies, so if anything in the future ever comes out where I'm raping or murdering somebody, that's just a parody. You'll defend me all the way to the...
No, I'll defend your statements. I would say that your statements about, I love raping people, I'd say that that's a parody or being sarcastic. You're a very sarcastic person. You often make these kinds of facetious claims. That's part of your character that needs to be taken into account. if you're saying, oh, I love to rape people, yeah, that's how I would defend Destiny from those kinds of accusations. And the reality, I mean, this is a good point. Any kind of abuse of women can be brought into a court of law nowadays with these very ambiguous standards of coercion and consent. So any man who has been in a relationship, have you ever lied to someone that you're in a relationship with? Have you ever been even slightly less than forthcoming in a relationship? Have you ever yelled at your partner for any reason or got into a fight? Have you ever, put your hands on your partner?
Do you truly think that you can't?
That can be used against you in a court of law.
Hold on, because I'm going to walk
according to these standards.
Yeah, so because when I walk away from this debate, these are going to be questions that I have, like incredulous. I can't tell if you're in good faith or not. Do you truly believe that we can't internationally talk about things like fraud or coercion because they can be fuzzy around the edges?
No, it's not about the edges. I'm talking about the core of the definition.
What do you think? There's no core international definition for fraud or coercion?
No, I think that this is all based on subjective standards.
What is what do you mean by subjective standards?
In the way that I said, like if a woman lies about her body count, if she lies about her sexual history, if she lies about, having, weighing a certain amount, I don't know. She's dishonest and she has a relationship with a man. She says, I love you, but she doesn't really love him. Is that considered to be fraud? Is that considered to be exploitation?
What law do you break? What law are you breaking there?
That's what's in question. Like, should it be a violation of the law? Like, if there was a clear-cut standard of, okay, if you lie in a sexual relationship, then that is exploitation and fraud. Then all of those cases in everyday life would be counted as fraud.
No one is saying that, though.
You can't, I know, no one's saying that. You can say that, though, based on the definition, the black and white law that's on the books. That's why the law is problematic. That's why the law is ambiguous.
So every single law that says if you use fraud or coercion, all those laws are bad because they're ambiguous. We just can't talk about that anymore.
Well, actually, there are these cases where fraud is in contention. What is the definition of fraud? And if you go to the Justice Department website and look up fraud, just Google Justice Department fraud, they'll say that fraud is something that is known by context. It's something that cannot be defined in every case. It's something very contextual. And that's why there isn't like a very clear-cut definition, even in these human trafficking cases. Say, Google that right now.
I don't need to Google that. It's just that this whole argument is absurd. I can't tell if you actually believe it. That because fraud can be very hard to define exactly, and it's going to be contextual from case to case, we have to throw it all completely. Like, there's not a single legal scholar, there's not a single court, international or otherwise. Like, it's just such a silly, it's not even wrong. Like, there's not even anything here to attack. Like, it's just such a silly, well, if you lie to a partner about a thing, I don't know, is that fraud? Well, I don't know. So then if I lie to a woman and I tell I'm going to marry her, I bring her to their country, and then I steal half her money, and then I make her work for me as a prostitute who's never done that kind of work before, and she's 16 years old, well, since I don't know if all lying is fraud, I guess I can't say any fraud is fraud. It's just silly argument.
So here's an example. If, let's say, exactly what you said happened, she came to the country on false pretenses, she gets into this house with 70 other women, everything that you said is true. There's no lock on the door. She's been threatened that if she leaves the house, she's going to be thrown off the balcony. Let's just assume that all of that is true. But she, at any time, she does have the opportunity to just open the door and run away. But there's this threat looming over her head. And there's also, the fact that she doesn't speak the language. She doesn't speak the Romanian language. So do you think that she's being coerced in that way?
That would be an argument you'd have to make in front of a court. Yeah, that there was coercion involved. That the person felt like there was a genuine threat to harm that person, that there was a genuine threat to their life, that they felt like they were being financially exploited and they couldn't leave. These are all arguments.
So they felt that way. They felt like that. That's subjective. That's exactly my point.
So hold on, let me just be clear. Your point is that feelings are inadmissible in a court of law? That how a person feels about a thing?
Feelings are subjective. That's
Do you understand what mens rea is? Oh, half of criminal code has to do with a person's state of mind and how they felt about things before going into it, of course.
Yeah, if you start accepting things like how a person feels and that being evidence for criminal action, then all kinds of criminality is happening around us every day.
This is how all criminal law works. All of it needs this.
Murder is not based on that. Murder is not based on anyone's
feelings. Of course it is based on your feelings.
If a person kills another, premeditated, kills another person, there's a dead body there, you had the motive, you actually had the weapon, you engaged
What is motive?
In that action,
what is motive? That's a feeling. Your feelings about a person.
Okay, if it's not murder, then it will be count as manslaughter, or it will be, if the person didn't die, that will be that'll count as assault.
Sure, but these are based on a
criminal
person's
assault.
feelings.
Those
How
are
you
all
feel?
things-
How you're feeling
No,
going
they're
into
not
it.
based on feelings. They're based on facts of this is the weapon, this is the dead body, this is the
A
opportunity.
weapon and a dead body? No, weapon and dead body
alibi.
mean nothing. No, weapon and dead body mean nothing.
Weapon and dead body mean nothing. DNA means nothing in murder
DNA
cases.
is circumstantial evidence. No, none of that means anything. If
It
I
doesn't
go
mean
into a room,
anything.
correct, that's right. You can keep laughing.
overstating.
No,
Like, you're
I'm not.
overstating
If
your
you
case.
walk into a room,
nothing.
if I walk into a room and there's a dead body and a gun with my fingerprints on it, no, you don't know yet if this is manslaughter or is this first degree murder. You don't know. That's what
There's
people
a
go
difference
to.
between
Let
saying
me
you
finish
don't
my statement.
know.
No,
We're
no,
saying
no.
that there's
You don't know.
nothing
One
to
sec,
do
one
with
sec,
it.
just to be sure we hear
Yeah, let
both
me
of
finish
you.
this. When I say it means nothing, what I mean is you have to ascertain it in an individual state of mind in order to figure out the crime that's been committed. It could be all the way up to first degree murder, where the person walked into the room like, I'm gonna kill you. They take a gun out and they shoot the person dead, and it's first degree premeditated murder 100%. Or it could literally be like two guys were looking at a gun and in a freak accident the gun goes off and it kills the guy, and neither of them had any reason to believe the gun would go off, and now it might not even be manslaughter. You might be completely exonerated. So yes, your feelings, your state of mind are incredibly important, arguably some of the most important things when we talk about things like murder or all sorts of crimes. Of course.
There's a difference between feelings and intention being a part of an overall case versus the entire case riding on how a person feels. Because when I
Intention is
asked
a
you-
feeling.
Now you're interrupting. When
Sorry,
you ask about when I asked you about would this be coercion, would this be a lack of meaningful consent, the first thing you started talking about, well, it depends on how the person feels about that situation. So that the entire case of whether this is or is not coercion, whether it is or is not a violation of meaningful consent, is it fraud, is it exploitation, depends on the feeling. That's not the same in murder cases and assault cases, in larceny, in money laundering. Your intentions and feelings could play a part in those cases, but the cases are not riding on whether you feel that you committed a crime or not, or whether you felt like you were compelled or not. Like you could feel like you can be involved in a kind of money laundering case and say, oh, but I felt like this mafia boss was going to kill me if I didn't participate. That doesn't matter. You're still going to be charged.
You're
prosecuted.
dead wrong. What you just described is entrapment, and it's literally one of the central points in proving whether or not you're going to be held criminally liable for something. If you are a person, real quick, just because it's just so wrong, I bring in a lawyer or something. If somebody comes up to you and like, hey, you should go sell these drugs to these school kids, or else, maybe I'm going to come and beat you up, and you go sell the drugs, then yeah, you're going to get fucked. But if a guy walks up to you and he's like, I need you to sell these drugs, I'm going to go to 111 Johnson Street, I'm going to murder your fucking family. I'm using that word. I'm going to go and murder your family. I've got like people on standby that are about to go kill your kids. And then you go and sell the drugs. Your feeling of whether or not there's a genuine threat there to your life is absolutely going to play a pivotal role in how you're going to be charged with any crime or no crime at all. Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. When Kyle Rittenhouse was exonerated, he used the affirmative defense of self-defense because he felt like his life was in danger. He had a feeling that those people were going to kill him. That's it. There was no fact of the matter. It was just he felt like his life was in danger. He didn't know if that guy with the skateboard was going to keep attacking him. He didn't know if the guy walking into was going to shoot him. He just felt like his life was in danger. The feelings are incredibly important. Unless we're talking like statutory crimes, like yeah, feelings are so important. That's so obvious. Okay, that's my last word. You can say whatever you want, but I can't go back.
I agree that feelings are.
I want to give Destiny the last word on this one, just because the last question was for Destiny. And that was about 5 minutes ago. So we got to move to the next one. This one, Famo says, Dan Schneider made many of the teen Nickelodeon shows. His then minor actors are now coming forth with allegations. He's not in court, but Tate is. I think that was for you, Destiny, about the Dan Schneider guy.
I don't know enough about Dan Schneider. He might be a horrible, bad person. I didn't come here to debate Dan Schneider. I'm not going to make strong statements on another individual unless I specifically prepared to talk about that individual. I've heard of weird things about the Dan Schneider guy. If it was the case that he was abusing children coming forward, then yeah, you should throw the book at him. I don't know if you would expect me to defend him or what, but yeah, I just don't know enough about him to have any strong statements about him.
You got it. Nighttime Lime says, what's the difference between murder, manslaughter, and self-defense, if not the feelings of the person involved?
I mean, every murderer can claim that he didn't have an intention, like it was just accidental. Like the intention is not the only thing that is relevant in that case. Whereas in these sex trafficking cases, it seems like the standard of believe all women is what's being used to keep people in prison. It's just on the testimony of women without anything else. Like that's my point. My point is not that feelings don't matter in any criminal case. Yeah, they do matter. Subjectivity is a part of many criminal cases. That I acknowledge that. So Destiny is strawmanning me by saying that I think that intention has nothing to do with criminal cases. It does, but if you kill someone and say, if you murder someone and you just say, oh, but I didn't have the intention, that's irrelevant. Like you can still be convicted of murder even if you claim that you didn't have the intention to actually premeditated kill someone in the first degree.
This one from Ben MC says, "I'm all for growing as a person. We should just forgive
It's just
Andrew
like
Tate
it's so
and move
false.
on. I'm
Proving
sure he
intent is
regrets
so
it. We all make
important in trying to like
mistakes
get somebody
sometimes,
on like
especially when women are involved."
murder one or murder two. Like it's so important.
This one from Nighttime Lime says, "Guys, the R gorilla was just a parody." I don't know what that
True.
means. This one, Austin King says, "Daniel, what is an NFT?
What is an NFT? Like, isn't
What is an NFT? What is an NFT?"
I have heard about NFTs selling like pictures of monkeys and gorillas online for crypto. Maybe Destiny can correct me. I'm not an expert on this topic.
You got it.
Close enough.
Famo says, "Destiny, if you're going by law, you do know that cheating on your wife isn't illegal in this country. So would you defend in secret? Would you defend secret infidelity because it isn't fraud, quote unquote?"
Was that for me?
Yes.
Would I support secret infidelity because it isn't fraud? I don't even know how to engage with that question. My brain was.
Night. I think this is the last one. Nighttime Line. Oh, we actually got that one, so let me just check if there are any last ones. Want to say thanks so much, folks, for tuning in. It's been already over what I expected in terms of the time for this debate. Do want to say, let's see. Let me just see if there's this one from Philip F. says, "To Daniel, how do you know the character of Tate is converting to Islam and not the man himself?"
Again, I don't know that. I can't know what is Andrew Tate's heart. You know, if he comes out and says, "Oh, I was just playing everyone, I'm not really Muslim," that'd be very sad. I'd be very disappointed in that. But I have hope that he is a sincere Muslim, and on that basis, just I think that I have that kind of love for him as a fellow Muslim. But you know, I can admit that I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know what his actual intentions are.
Maxim Lebrant says, "Is there a world where the Tates are rightfully convicted, and what evidence would you need to see for that to be the case?"
So I guess that's for me. The evidence that I would need to see that it is the case, I need, for example, you show me pictures of women being chained to radiators at Andrew Tate's residence. You have a pattern of women coming to the police in Romania where they're running to the police department, and they have like these kinds of wounds from being shackled, or they have other kinds of medical problems. They have to be hospitalized. There's like a pattern of women being hospitalized that have been working with Tate from all kinds of injuries and abuse. Those kinds of things would be, I think, very relevant evidence that could be cited, especially when there's a pattern of it over a period of time, since he's working with 70 plus women over many years.
You got it. Thank you very much for this. I think that's actually it. So I want to say thank you very much to our guests. It's been a true pleasure. Destiny and Daniel are linked in the description box. What are you waiting for? You can click on those links right now. Thanks, Destiny and Daniel. It's been a true pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day. I'll be back in a moment, folks, with a post-credit scene, a really short one on upcoming debates, so stick around.